The wedding invitation felt like a slap across the face. Thick cardstock, embossed gold lettering, Ryan's name beside someone else's. Emily Dawson had spent 6 months convincing herself she was over him, that the brutal breakup was just a bump in the road. But seeing it in black and white, his perfect new life, his perfect new bride, shattered that lie completely. The worst part? He'd invited her. Actually wanted her there to witness his happiness. She should burn it, forget he ever existed. But instead, she did something that would change everything. She decided to go. If you're enjoying this story, hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far Emily's journey travels. Now, let's dive in. The envelope arrived on a Tuesday. Emily had been carrying groceries up the narrow stairs to her apartment. The building smelled like old carpet and someone's burnt dinner when she saw it wedged in her mailbox. Thick, expensive. The kind of paper that announced itself as important before you even opened it. She knew what it was immediately. Her stomach dropped. For a moment, she just stood there in the dingy hallway, a bag of generic brand pasta digging into her arm, staring at that pristine white rectangle like it might bite her. Mrs. Chen from 3B shuffled past with her tiny dog, giving Emily that look, the one that said, "Still single, poor thing," and Emily forced herself to move. Inside her apartment, she dropped the groceries on the counter. Jar of sauce, box of pasta, wilted lettuce she'd bought on sale. The envelope sat separate from everything else, too clean for her cluttered kitchen. She should throw it away. That would be the smart thing, the healthy thing. Dr. Morrison, her therapist, the one her insurance barely covered, would probably tell her that opening it was engaging with trauma, or some other phrase that cost $150 an hour to hear. Emily opened it anyway. The invitation was even worse than she'd imagined. Cream-colored cardstock, gold foil lettering that caught the light. Ryan Cole and Vanessa Whitmore request the pleasure of your company. The date was 3 weeks away. Venue, the Ashford Estate. Emily had looked that place up once, back when she and Ryan were together, and she'd stupidly thought maybe someday they'd... She shoved that thought away before it could finish forming. There was a handwritten note tucked inside, Ryan's familiar scrawl. M. I know this might seem weird, but V and I both want you there. We've moved past everything, and I think it would mean a lot. Hope you can make it. R. We've moved past everything, Emily read aloud to her empty apartment. Her voice came out smaller than she wanted, that same timid whisper she'd been trying to fix for months. We've moved past everything. As if he'd been the one hurt. As if he'd been the one who'd spent 3 years building a life with someone, only to receive a text message, not even a phone call, saying it was over. As if he'd been the one who'd found out 2 weeks later, through Instagram of all things, that his ex was already dating someone new, someone rich, someone confident, someone everything Emily wasn't. She set the invitation on her tiny kitchen table, next to the bills she'd been avoiding and the half-finished crossword puzzle from Sunday. The apartment felt smaller suddenly, the walls pressing in. 1 bedroom, cramped kitchen, a bathroom where the shower never got quite hot enough. This was supposed to be temporary when she'd moved in 4 years ago. Temporary until she and Ryan found a place together. Temporary until her life actually started. Now, it just felt permanent. Her phone buzzed. Text from her coworker Jenna. You picking up that extra shift Friday? Marcus called out again. Emily texted back, yeah, I can take it. She could always take it. That was her thing. Reliable Emily, quiet Emily, the one who never caused problems, never said no, never made anyone uncomfortable with messy emotions or difficult conversations. She'd built her entire personality around being easy to deal with. And where had that gotten her? The diner where Emily worked was called Rosie's, though there hadn't been a Rosie in at least 15 years. It squatted on the corner of 5th and Morrison like it had always been there and always would be. Red vinyl booths, black and white checkered floor, a jukebox in the corner that only played songs from the 70s. The coffee was burnt, the eggs were greasy, and the breakfast special hadn't changed price since 2003. Emily loved it and hated it in equal measure. She loved the routine, the predictability. Same shifts, same customers, same rhythm. Coffee refills at booth 3. No tomatoes for the guy at the counter. Extra syrup for the family that came in every Saturday. She could do it all without thinking, which meant she didn't have to actually be present. Just muscle memory and forced smiles. She hated that she was still there. that this was all she'd managed to become. "You look like death," Jenna said when Emily arrived for her shift Thursday evening. Jenna was everything Emily wasn't: loud, confident, the kind of person who laughed with her whole body and said exactly what she thought. She'd been working at Rosie's for 6 months and had already asked for 3 raises. "Seriously, Em, did you sleep at all?" "I'm fine." "You're a terrible liar." Jenna grabbed 2 plates from the kitchen window, Monte Cristo and a burger, both for table 7. "Is this about Ryan?" Emily had made the mistake of telling Jenna about the invitation during their break yesterday. She'd meant to keep it to herself, but Jenna had a way of pulling things out of people, some kind of superpower. "I'm not going," Emily said, tying her apron. "I don't know why I even considered it." "Because you're curious." "I'm not." "You are. You want to see if he's actually happy, if she's actually better than you." Jenna delivered the plates with a smile that didn't reach her eyes, then came back to the counter. "Which is stupid, by the way. She's not better than you. She's just richer." "Prettier," Emily added quietly. "Debatable. More successful. Her dad owns half of downtown. That's not success. That's inheritance." Emily managed a small smile. Jenna meant well, but meaning well didn't change reality. Vanessa Whitmore was everything Ryan had apparently wanted: sophisticated, ambitious, the kind of woman who belonged at charity galas and art gallery openings. The kind of woman who knew which fork to use at fancy dinners and could make small talk with important people without stumbling over her words. Emily could barely order pizza without apologizing 3 times. The dinner rush started around 6. It was never really a rush at Rosie's, more like a gradual filling of booths and tables that peaked around 7:30 before tapering off. Emily fell into the familiar rhythm: take orders, deliver food, refill coffee, clear plates, smile. Don't make eye contact for too long. Apologize if someone had to wait more than 5 minutes, even though it wasn't her fault the kitchen was short-staffed. She was carrying a tray of dirty dishes back when she saw him. He was sitting in this corner booth, the one by the window that looked out onto the parking lot. Emily almost didn't notice him at first. The booth was technically in Jenna's section, but something made her look. Maybe the way he sat, perfectly still, like he was waiting for something specific. Maybe the expensive cut of his suit in a place where most people wore jeans and flannel. Maybe just instinct. He was looking right at her. Not the casual glance of someone trying to flag down their server. Not the impatient stare of someone who'd been waiting too long. Something else. Something that made Emily's breath catch for reasons she couldn't name. She looked away quickly, nearly dropping the tray. "Em, you okay?" Jenna appeared at her elbow, grabbing a few dirty plates. "You look like you saw a ghost." "I'm fine. Who's that?" Emily nodded toward the corner booth, trying to be subtle. Jenna glanced over. "Came in about 10 minutes ago. Hasn't ordered yet. Keeps looking at the door like he's waiting for someone. Why?" "No reason." But Emily couldn't stop herself from looking again. He was still watching her, not creepy. Nothing about it felt threatening, more like recognition. Like he knew her, though Emily was certain they'd never met. She would have remembered. He had the kind of face you remembered. Sharp features, dark hair that was almost too perfectly styled, eyes that seemed to see more than they should. He raised 2 fingers in a small wave. Emily's face burned. She turned away fast, nearly colliding with Marcus as he pushed through the kitchen doors with a tray of burgers. "Jesus, Dawson, watch it!" Sorry, I... She retreated to the safety of the counter, busying herself with rolling silverware into napkins, even though they had plenty already rolled. Her hands shook slightly. Stupid. She was being stupid. He was just a customer. Probably wasn't even looking at her, probably looking past her at something else, and she'd just imagined... "Excuse me." Emily jumped. He was standing at the counter now, hands in his pockets, that same unsettling calm in his expression. Up close, he was even more out of place. The suit probably cost more than she made in 3 months. Watch that actually looked expensive, not the knockoff kind from department stores. Posture that suggested he'd never apologized for existing in his entire life. "Hi." Emily's voice came out barely above a whisper. She cleared her throat, tried again. "Hi, can I help you?" "I hope so." He had an accent, not strong, but they're Italian, maybe. It softened the edges of his words. "I'm looking for someone. Emily Dawson. I was told she works here." Every muscle in Emily's body went rigid. Who's asking? Someone who'd like to buy her dinner. He smiled, and it wasn't the kind of smile she was used to seeing. Not polite, not friendly, something sharper underneath, like a secret he wasn't quite ready to share. My name is Luca DeLuca, and I have a proposition for you. The rational part of Emily's brain, the part that had sat through the mandatory stranger danger presentations in elementary school and watched enough true crime documentaries to know better, screamed at her to walk away. Make an excuse, get Jenna, call the police if necessary. But there was another part, smaller and quieter but somehow louder in this moment, that was desperately curious. I'm Emily, she heard herself say. I know. Luca glanced around the diner, at the faded booths, the flickering fluorescent lights, the coffee stains on the counter that wouldn't come out no matter how hard anyone scrubbed. Is there somewhere we can talk? Somewhere private? I'm working. I'll wait. He said it like waiting was nothing, like time bent around him instead of the other way around. When does your shift end? 11. Then I'll be here at 11. He turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and Emily? Don't run. I'm not here to hurt you. Quite the opposite, actually. He left before she could respond, walked out into the parking lot and got into a car. Black, sleek, probably something European, that absolutely did not belong in the Rosie's parking lot. Emily watched through the window as he pulled out onto the street and disappeared. Okay, what the hell was that? Jenna appeared at her side, eyes wide. Do you know him? No? Then why does he know your full name? I have no idea. M. Jenna grabbed her shoulders, forcing eye contact. That guy is either really good news or really bad news, and I'm not sure which is scarier. You're not actually going to meet him, right? Emily should say no. Should agree that this was insane, that she'd tell him to leave her alone, maybe mention it to the police just in case. But that small, quiet part of her that had been silent for so long was suddenly very loud. I don't know, she said honestly. The rest of her shift crawled by. Emily went through the motions, orders, deliveries, the forced smile she'd perfected over years of service work, but her mind was somewhere else entirely. Who was Luca DeLuca? How did he know her name? What kind of proposition could a man like that possibly have for someone like her? She thought about texting Ryan. He was the only person she'd dated long enough to potentially have angry exes or weird connections to her life. But that was ridiculous. Ryan barely remembered her birthday when they were together. He certainly wouldn't send some mysterious stranger to find her at work months after their breakup. By the time 11 o'clock rolled around, Emily had almost convinced herself that Luca wouldn't show, that she'd imagined the intensity of their conversation, that he'd thought better of whatever strange plan he had. Then she walked outside and saw the car. Same black sedan, parked under the one working streetlight in the lot. Luca leaned against the hood, checking his phone with the casual patience of someone who'd never been kept waiting against his will. He looked up when he heard the diner door close. Emily. Not a question, statement of fact. She walked over slowly, keys clutched in her hand like they might protect her from whatever was about to happen. I shouldn't be doing this. Probably not, he agreed. But you're curious. How do you know my name? I know a lot of things. He pocketed his phone. I know you work 50-hour weeks at a diner that pays minimum wage. I know you live alone in a one-bedroom apartment on 7th Street. I know you've been attending therapy sessions every other Wednesday for the past 4 months. He paused, and something in his expression softened. And I know you received a wedding invitation 3 days ago that's been keeping you up at night. Emily's blood ran cold. Are you following me? No. Then how? Because I needed to understand who you are before I approached you. Luca pushed off the car, took a step closer. Not threatening, but deliberate. Emily, I'm going to be very direct with you because I suspect you appreciate directness more than charm. I need a favor. You need revenge. I'm proposing an arrangement that benefits us both. I don't want revenge. Everyone wants revenge. He said it simply, like stating the color of the sky. They just don't always admit it. Ryan Cole ended your 3-year relationship via text message and had a new girlfriend, a wealthy, well-connected girlfriend, within 2 weeks. Now he's getting married and he invited you to watch. You're telling me there's no part of you that wants to show him what he gave up? Emily's throat tightened. She wanted to deny it, should deny it, but the truth was ugly and painful and sitting in her chest like a stone. Yes. Yes, she wanted Ryan to see her and regret everything. Wanted him to realize that quiet didn't mean worthless, that shy didn't mean broken. What kind of favor? She asked quietly. Luca smiled, and this time it reached his eyes. I need a date to a wedding. What? Ryan's wedding, specifically. I need to attend, and I need to bring someone who will make an impression, someone unexpected. He tilted his head, studying her like she was a puzzle he was solving. You're perfect. I'm not. Emily gestured at herself helplessly. Look at me. I'm not the kind of person who makes impressions. You could be. You don't know me. I know enough. Luca's voice was gentle but firm, the tone of someone stating an undeniable fact. I know you're stronger than you think. I know you hide because it's safer than being seen. And I know that somewhere under all that fear is someone remarkable. He paused. I can help you find her, but only if you're willing to try. Emily's eyes stung. She blinked hard, refusing to cry in front of this stranger who seemed to see straight through her carefully constructed walls. Why? Why what? Why do you care? What do you get out of this? Access, Luca said simply. Ryan's wedding is being attended by some very important people. People I need to connect with. Arriving with you, transformed, confident, everything he threw away sends a message. He met her eyes. We help each other. I get my connections. You get your moment. It was insane. Absolutely insane. Emily should walk away right now, get in her car, drive home, forget this conversation ever happened. Instead, she heard herself ask, how much time do we have? 3 weeks. That's not enough time to... It's plenty of time. Luca opened his car door. Get in. Let's get coffee somewhere that doesn't smell like grease and talk specifics. I have my own car. Then follow me. But Emily? He looked at her over the roof of the sedan. If you drive away right now, this opportunity doesn't come back. I need an answer tonight. Emily stood in the parking lot, keys digging into her palm, every logical thought screaming at her to run. This was how people ended up on the news. Missing girl, last seen talking to a strange man, family in tears begging for information. But then she thought about that invitation sitting on her kitchen table. Thought about Ryan's careless note. We've moved past everything, like she was something to move past. Something forgettable. She thought about being forgettable for the rest of her life. Okay, Emily whispered. Then louder, stronger. Okay, I'll do it. Luca's smile was sharp and satisfied. Good. Now follow me and try to keep up. He got in the car and pulled out of the parking lot. Emily stood there for 5 more seconds, giving herself one last chance to change her mind. Then she got in her car and followed. The coffee shop Luca led her to was nothing like the diner. Soft lighting, exposed brick walls, the kind of place where a single cup cost more than her hourly wage. It was nearly midnight and the place was still half full with people working on laptops or having quiet conversations. Emily felt immediately out of place in her diner uniform and worn sneakers. Luca ordered for both of them without asking what she wanted. Espresso for himself, something called a lavender honey latte for her. They sat in a corner booth and Emily wrapped her hands around the warm cup to stop them from shaking. You're scared, Luca observed. Obviously. Good. Fear means you're taking this seriously. He took a sip of his espresso. Let me lay out what I'm proposing. 3 weeks from tomorrow, we attend Ryan Cole's wedding together. I introduce you as my fiancé. Fiancé? Emily's voice rose. A few heads turned. She lowered it quickly. That's too much. It's exactly enough. Luca's expression didn't change. Girlfriend is too casual, wife is too permanent. Fiancé is perfect, committed enough to be believable, temporary enough to be plausible. And it ensures no one questions why we're together. People will absolutely question why we're together. Have you seen me? I have. That's why we have 3 weeks to prepare. He set down his cup. I'm not just offering you a dress and a haircut, Emily. I'm offering you a transformation, confidence, presence, the ability to walk into a room and have people notice. I don't want people to notice me. Yes, you do. You've just convinced yourself that wanting to be seen is somehow wrong. He leaned forward. Tell me something. When's the last time you spoke up in a room full of people? Expressed an opinion that might be controversial? Said no to something you didn't want to do? Emily stared at her latte. The foam had a leaf pattern in it. Someone had taken the time to make that. I don't know. Exactly. You've spent so long making yourself small that you've forgotten you're allowed to take up space. Luca's voice gentled. I can teach you. Not how to be someone else, but how to be yourself without apologizing for it. 3 weeks of training, then one night where you show everyone, especially Ryan, who you really are. And after that? After that, you decide. If you want to go back to your quiet life, you can. No obligations, no strings. But I suspect, he smiled slightly, I suspect once you remember what it feels like to be seen, you won't want to hide anymore. Emily's chest felt tight. She wanted to believe him, wanted to believe that she could be the kind of person who walked into a wedding on a stranger's arm and commanded attention. But the gap between wanting and believing felt impossibly wide. What if I can't do it? She asked quietly. What if I freeze or panic or just revert back to being invisible? Then we'll work on it until you don't. Luca's certainty was almost aggressive in its firmness. Emily, I don't fail at things I commit to, and I'm committing to this. To you. The question is whether you're willing to commit to yourself. She took a sip of her latte. It was too sweet, floral in a way she wasn't used to, but somehow exactly what she needed. What do you get out of this? Really? I told you, access. To who? Luca hesitated, and Emily saw the calculation in his eyes. How much to reveal, how much to hold back. There's a man named Marcus Whitmore, Vanessa's father. He controls a significant portion of this city's commercial real estate, among other interests. I need a meeting with him, and he doesn't take meetings with people he doesn't know. So crash the wedding without me. It's not that simple. Showing up alone makes me look desperate. Showing up with you, transformed, poised, clearly someone I value enough to bring into my world, that makes me look powerful. Worth knowing. He met her eyes. In my line of work, perception is everything. What line of work is that? Investment, acquisitions, strategic partnerships. The answer came too smoothly, too practiced. Emily had the distinct impression he was telling the truth while somehow lying at the same time. Nothing that should concern you. All you need to know is that I'm very good at what I do, and I have the resources to make this transformation happen. Emily should ask more questions. Press for details. Demand to know exactly what she was getting into. Instead, she asked, when do we start? Luca's answering smile was brilliant. Tomorrow. I'll pick you up at 8. Wear something comfortable. We're going shopping first. Your current wardrobe won't work for what I have in mind. I can't afford. I'm covering all expenses. Consider it an investment. He stood, pulling out his wallet and leaving 2 crisp bills on the table. Way too much for coffee. Emily, before we do this, I need you to understand something. This isn't a game. For 3 weeks you belong to me. Not in any romantic sense, he added quickly, seeing her expression. But your time, your trust, your willingness to be pushed outside your comfort zone, that all belongs to this project. Can you commit to that? Emily thought about the wedding invitation, about Ryan's easy dismissal of 3 years, about Vanessa Whitmore's perfect life and perfect smile, and the way Emily had felt like a failure ever since she'd seen that engagement announcement. She thought about being invisible forever. Yes, she said. I can commit. Good. Luca held out his hand. Not for a handshake, palm up, like an invitation. Then let's begin. Emily placed her hand in his. His grip was warm, firm, absolutely certain. 8 a.m. tomorrow, he reminded her. Don't be late. Then he was gone, walking out into the night like he owned it. Emily sat in the coffee shop for another 10 minutes, staring at her half-finished latte and wondering what she'd just agreed to. Her phone buzzed. Text from Jenna. Did you get murdered? Do I need to call the cops? Emily smiled despite herself. Still alive. Might have done something crazy, though. How crazy? Tell you tomorrow. She drove home through empty streets, mind racing. Her apartment looked smaller than ever when she unlocked the door. Cramped kitchen, tiny bathroom, bedroom barely big enough for her full-size bed. The wedding invitation still sat on the table, mocking her. Emily picked it up, stared at Ryan's name, at Vanessa's, at the elegant script that invited her to celebrate their union. Then she tucked it into her purse. 3 weeks. She had 3 weeks to become someone worth remembering. Emily wasn't sure if that was enough time or far too much, but she was going to find out. She fell asleep that night with her phone alarm set for 6:30, giving herself extra time to shower and find something acceptable to wear shopping with a man who wore suits that probably cost more than her car. Sleep came in fits and starts, dreams fragmenting into strange scenes, Ryan laughing at her, Luca's intense stare, walking into a room full of strangers who all turned to look at once. The alarm dragged her back to consciousness at 6:30 exactly. Emily lay in bed for a moment, staring at her ceiling fan, giving herself one last chance to text Luca and call this whole thing off. Instead, she got up and got ready. By 7:45, she was dressed in her best jeans and a sweater that didn't have any visible stains, hair pulled back in a ponytail, minimal makeup because she'd never learned to do more than that. She looked exactly like what she was, a waitress with a discount wardrobe and no idea what she was doing. At 7:58, she heard the knock. Emily opened the door to find Luca looking impossibly put together in dark slacks and a crisp white shirt. No tie, top button undone. He held 2 to-go cups of coffee. "You're early," she said. "I'm always early." "Ready?" "No." "Perfect. Let's go." He handed her one of the coffees, that same lavender honey latte from last night, which meant he'd remembered, which meant he paid attention in ways Emily wasn't used to people paying attention to her. She locked her apartment and followed him down to the street where his car waited. "Where are we going?" she asked as he pulled into traffic. "Downtown. There's a boutique I work with for situations like this." He glanced at her. "How do you feel?" "Terrified." "Good. That means you're not taking this lightly." He navigated through morning traffic with easy confidence. "We're going to start with the surface things today. Clothes, some basics on posture and presentation. Tomorrow we'll work on conversation. Day after, we'll practice specific scenarios. The goal is to build your confidence incrementally so you're not overwhelmed." "What if I can't do this?" "You can." "You don't know that." "I do." He said it with such absolute certainty that Emily almost believed him. "Emily, I'm very good at reading people. It's a necessary skill in my world. And I can see past the fear and the self-doubt to who you actually are. You're stronger than you think. You just need permission to show it." "I shouldn't need permission." "No, you shouldn't. But you do, so I'm giving it to you." He pulled up to a curb in front of a storefront with no visible sign, just a single elegant window displaying a black dress on a mannequin. "We're here." Inside, the boutique was all white walls and soft lighting, the kind of place where they probably turned away people who looked too ordinary. A woman appeared from the back, tall, impeccably dressed, appraising Emily with a single sweeping glance that made her want to disappear. "Luca." The woman's voice was warm, but her eyes stayed on Emily. "This is her?" "This is Emily. Emily, meet Margot. She's going to help us today." Margot circled Emily slowly, professional, but unnervingly thorough. "Good bone structure, decent posture when she's not trying to make herself smaller. What's the occasion?" "Wedding, 3 weeks. She needs to look like she belongs on my arm." "Challenging?" But Margot smiled. "I like challenges. Come with me, darling. Let's see what we're working with." The next 3 hours were surreal. Margot pulled outfit after outfit, dismissing most before Emily could even try them on. Too safe, too young, too apologetic. When she found something she liked, she'd have Emily put it on and then critique every detail. How it hung, where it pulled, whether the color made Emily's skin look washed out or vibrant. Luca watched from a chair in the corner, offering occasional input, but mostly just observing. His presence should have made Emily more self-conscious, but somehow it had the opposite effect. He'd seen her in her diner uniform. He'd seen her at her most uncertain. This was just another level of vulnerable, and he wasn't flinching. "This one." Margot held up a dress, deep emerald green, simple lines, nothing flashy. "Try it." Emily disappeared into the dressing room. The dress slid on like water, fitting in a way her clothes never fit. When she looked in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. The color brought out the green in her hazel eyes, made her skin look luminous instead of pale. The cut was elegant without being revealing, sophisticated without trying too hard. She stepped out slowly. Luca looked up from his phone. His expression didn't change much, just a slight widening of his eyes, a pause that stretched half a second too long. "That's the one." "You're sure?" Margot asked. "I'm sure." By the time they left the boutique, Emily had 3 complete outfits, including shoes and accessories. The emerald dress for the wedding, a casual but polished ensemble for what Luca called practice runs, and something in between for what he mysteriously described as contingencies. The total was more than Emily made in 2 months. "I can't let you, she started. "You already did. This is an investment, remember?" Luca loaded the bags into his trunk. "Next stop? Hair." "My hair is fine." "Your hair is hiding you." He opened her car door. "Time to stop hiding." The salon was less intimidating than the boutique, probably because the stylist, a man named Andre with purple highlights and kind eyes, actually asked Emily what she wanted instead of just making decisions for her. "I don't want to look like someone else," Emily said quietly, sitting in the chair and meeting Andre's eyes in the mirror. I want to look like a better version of me." Andre smiled. "Honey, that's the only kind of makeover worth doing." He worked for over an hour, cutting and shaping, adding what he called movement and dimension. Emily kept her eyes closed for most of it, not wanting to watch the transformation in real time. When Andre finally turned her chair to face the mirror, she gasped. It was still her, but somehow more. The cut framed her face differently, made her features look delicate instead of plain. The color was richer, warmer. She looked like someone worth noticing. "Oh," she whispered. "Yeah," Andre agreed, satisfied. "Oh." Luca was waiting when she emerged. He looked at her for a long moment, then nodded once. "Better." Just that. Better. But the way he said it made Emily stand a little straighter. They had lunch at a restaurant Emily never would have entered on her own, the kind with cloth napkins and a wine list and waiters who moved like dancers. Luca ordered for both of them again, then spent the meal pointing out small things. "You apologized too much. The waiter bumped your chair. That's not your fault. Don't say sorry. When you speak, you drop your voice at the end like you're expecting to be interrupted. Keep it level, confident." Eye contact. "I know it's uncomfortable, but hold it just 3 seconds longer than feels natural." Emily tried, failed, tried again. By the end of the meal, she managed to send her plate back when the steak was overcooked without apologizing 3 times first. It felt like a massive victory. "Progress," Luca said, signing the check. "Tomorrow we work on conversation. I'm going to teach you how to talk to people you find intimidating." "That's everyone." Exactly. Which is why we're starting with me." He stood, offering his hand to help her up, a gesture that felt old-fashioned and somehow right. "Same time tomorrow. Wear the casual outfit Margot picked. We're going somewhere public." "Where?" "You'll see. For now, go home, rest, process everything." He walked her to her car. "Emily, how do you feel?" She thought about it honestly. Overwhelmed, excited, terrified. Like maybe, just maybe, this wasn't a complete disaster waiting to happen. "Different," she said finally. Luca's smile was small, but genuine. "Good. Different is exactly what we're going for." He waited until she got in her car and started the engine before walking back to his own. Emily watched him in her rearview mirror, this mysterious man who'd appeared out of nowhere and somehow convinced her to let him rebuild her piece by piece. She drove home in a daze. The woman who looked back at her in the mirror didn't quite feel real yet. Hair perfect, subtle makeup Margot had applied before they left the boutique, clothes hanging in garment bags in her back seat that cost more than her monthly rent. Her phone buzzed as she pulled into her parking spot. Text from Luca. "You did well today. Tomorrow will be harder. Be ready." Emily stared at the message for a long moment. Then she typed back, "I'll be ready." She wasn't sure if she was lying or not, but she was definitely going to try. Emily woke up the next morning with her heart already racing. The alarm hadn't even gone off yet. Her body had decided 6 a.m. was late enough, anxiety doing the work of any clock. She lay in bed staring at the ceiling, running through everything that had happened yesterday. The boutique, the salon, Luca's steady voice telling her she was stronger than she thought. It still felt like something that had happened to someone else. She dragged herself to the shower, letting the hot water beat against her shoulders while she tried to calm down. Today would be harder, he'd said. What did that even mean? Yesterday had been about appearances, surfaces, things that could be fixed with money and good lighting. Today was supposed to be about conversation, which meant actually opening her mouth and stringing words together without apologizing or stumbling or wishing she could disappear. The casual outfit Margot had picked hung on the back of her bathroom door. Tailored pants in a soft charcoal gray, a cream silk blouse that somehow managed to look elegant without trying, leather flats that actually fit properly. Emily put it on slowly, still getting used to how clothes could feel when they weren't bought on clearance or pulled from the sale rack at department stores. She looked in the mirror. The haircut from yesterday still looked good. Better than good, actually. Andre had shown her how to style it before she left, and she'd managed to recreate about 70% of what he'd done. Close enough. Her phone buzzed. Luca. Outside in 10. Emily's stomach dropped. She wasn't ready, wasn't even close to ready. But she grabbed her purse anyway and headed downstairs. Luca was leaning against his car when she emerged, coffee in hand. He looked her over with that same assessing expression he'd worn yesterday, like he was cataloging every detail. Better, he said, handing her a cup. Same lavender latte. You're learning to stand up straight. I've always stood up straight. No, you've always tried to take up less space. There's a difference. He opened her door. Get in. We have a full day. They drove into the city, traffic building as rush hour kicked in. Emily sipped her coffee and tried not to think too hard about where they were going or what she'd be expected to do when they got there. Where are we headed? She finally asked. A gallery opening. Small, private. Good opportunity to practice. Emily's chest tightened. Practice what? Talking to strangers, making conversation, being present in a room without disappearing into the wallpaper. He glanced at her. How do you normally handle social situations? I avoid them. And when you can't avoid them? Emily thought about work parties, the few times Ryan had dragged her to events with his friends. I find a corner, stay quiet, leave as soon as possible. Why? Because I don't know what to say. I'm not good at small talk, and people always look at me like they're waiting for me to say something interesting, and I never do, so I just... She stopped, realizing she was rambling. Sorry. Stop apologizing. Luca's voice was firm but not unkind. And stop assuming you're not interesting. You're just afraid of being judged, so you judge yourself first. It's a defense mechanism. You sound like my therapist. Your therapist is probably right about most things, but therapy only works if you actually apply what you learn. He pulled into a parking garage. Today's lesson. People are too worried about themselves to judge you as harshly as you think. Most conversations are just two people trying not to look stupid. Once you understand that, it gets easier. They walked 2 blocks to a building Emily had passed 100 times without noticing. Old brick, narrow entrance, a small brass plaque that read Meridian Gallery. Inside, the space opened up into white walls and polished concrete floors. Abstract paintings hung with careful precision. There were maybe 20 people scattered throughout, holding wine glasses and speaking in low murmurs. Emily's first instinct was to turn around and leave. Luca's hand found the small of her back, steadying. Breathe. You're not here to impress anyone. You're here to practice existing in a space without apologizing for it. A woman approached. 50s, elegant in the way rich people were elegant, jewelry that caught the light. Luca, darling, I didn't know you were coming. Catherine, he kissed her cheek. Last-minute decision. This is Emily. Emily, Catherine owns the gallery. Catherine's eyes swept over Emily with the same assessing look Margot had used yesterday. Lovely to meet you. Are you familiar with Morrison's work? Emily had no idea who Morrison was. Yesterday she would have mumbled something non-committal and found a reason to excuse herself. But Luca was watching her, and something in his expression said, try. I'm not, Emily said, keeping her voice level like he'd taught her at lunch yesterday. But I'd like to know more. Catherine's expression warmed slightly. Well, you're in luck. I was just about to give a small tour for a few collectors. You're welcome to join. Thank you, I will. Catherine drifted away to gather her group, and Luca leaned close. Good. You didn't panic, didn't apologize, didn't deflect. That's progress. I feel like I'm going to throw up. You'll feel that way for a while. Keep breathing. The tour was excruciating. Catherine spoke about artistic vision and color theory and the way Morrison challenged traditional perspectives. Emily understood maybe half of it, but she nodded and asked one question when the silence stretched too long. The other people in the group, three collectors who looked like they bought art the way normal people bought groceries, mostly ignored her. That should have felt bad. Instead, it was almost a relief. She could observe without having to perform. After the tour, Luca guided her to a quiet corner. "How do you feel?" "Like I don't belong here." "Oh, you're here, aren't you? That means you belong." He handed her a glass of wine from a passing waiter. "Now comes the hard part. See that man by the window? Silver hair, navy suit?" Emily glanced over. The man was talking to a younger woman, gesturing at one of the paintings. "I want you to go talk to him." "About what?" "Anything. The art, the weather, where he's from. It doesn't matter. The point is to engage." Luca's voice was patient but insistent. "You have 5 minutes." "I'll be right here." "What if he doesn't want to talk to me?" "Then the conversation ends and you come back. But you won't know unless you try." Emily's hands were shaking. She set down the wine glass before she could spill it, took a breath, and walked over before she could talk herself out of it. The man looked up as she approached. Up close, he was older than she'd thought, late 60s maybe, lines around his eyes that suggested he smiled often. "Hello." "Hi." Emily's voice came out too quiet. She cleared her throat, tried again. "Hi, I'm Emily." "Robert." He shook her hand. His grip was warm, firm. "Are you a collector?" "No, just exploring. This is my first gallery opening." "Well, welcome to the madness," he smiled. "What do you think of Morrison's work?" Emily looked at the painting they were standing near, swirls of blue and gray, something that might have been a figure or might have been nothing at all. "Honestly, I don't know enough about art to have an informed opinion, but I like that it makes me feel something, even if I can't explain what." Robert's smile widened. "That's the most honest thing anyone said to me all evening. Most people here pretend to understand everything. It's refreshing to hear someone admit they don't." They talked for 10 minutes. Robert told her about his work as an architect, how he'd gotten into collecting art late in life, how his wife thought he was ridiculous for spending money on paintings when their house was already full. Emily mostly listened, asking questions when it felt natural, and somehow the conversation didn't feel forced or painful. When she finally excused herself and returned to Luca, she was almost smiling. "Well?" he asked. "That wasn't as terrible as I thought it would be." "No, it wasn't." He looked genuinely pleased. "You were natural, present. You didn't try to be someone else. That's exactly what we're building." They stayed another hour. Luca introduced her to 3 more people, each time stepping back to let Emily handle the conversation herself. She stumbled sometimes, fell into old habits of apologizing or dropping her voice. But each time she caught herself a little faster. By the time they left, Emily's head was spinning, but not in the panicked way she'd expected. More like exhaustion mixed with something that felt suspiciously like accomplishment. "Lunch," Luca announced, leading her to a bistro 2 streets over. "Then we're going to talk about Ryan." Emily's brief good mood evaporated. "Do we have to?" "Yes, you can't walk into that wedding without a strategy." He ordered salad for her, pasta for himself, and then fixed her with that unnervingly direct stare. "Tell me about the relationship. How did it start? Why does that matter?" "Because I need to understand who he is, what he wanted from you, what made him think he could discard you so easily." Luca's voice was matter-of-fact, clinical. "Start at the beginning." Emily pushed lettuce around her plate. "We met at a coffee shop. I spilled my drink. He helped me clean it up. Very romantic." The bitterness in her voice surprised her. "He asked for my number. I said yes because I couldn't believe someone like him was interested in someone like me." "Someone like him? Confident, successful, the kind of person who had a 5-year plan and actually stuck to it." She stabbed a cherry tomato. "I thought he saw something in me. Turns out he just saw someone who wouldn't challenge him." "Explain." "Ryan liked that I was quiet. He said it was calming, that I was different from the women in his office who were always competing or playing games. But what he really meant was that I was easy. I didn't argue when he changed plans last minute. Didn't complain when he forgot my birthday. Didn't push back when he started spending more time at work than with me. Emily's throat felt tight. I made myself smaller and smaller, trying to be what he needed, and it still wasn't enough. Luca was quiet for a moment. Do you know why he ended it? He said we'd grown apart, that I wasn't ambitious enough, wasn't going anywhere. She laughed, sharp and bitter. Which was rich coming from someone who'd spent 3 years telling me I was perfect the way I was. He lied. Obviously. No, I mean, he lied about the reason. Luca leaned forward. Men like Ryan don't leave because their partner isn't ambitious. They leave because their partner stops being useful. You served a purpose. Someone stable, undemanding, convenient. When he met Vanessa, she offered him something you couldn't: access, connections, a better image. That doesn't make me feel better. It's not supposed to make you feel better. It's supposed to make you angry. His eyes were hard. Ryan didn't see your quiet strength as valuable. He saw it as exploitable. And now he's invited you to his wedding because he thinks you're too weak to say no, too polite to make a scene. Emily's hands were fists under the table. I hate that you're right. Good. Hate is useful. We're going to channel that. Luca sat back. When we walk into that wedding, we're not just showing him what he lost. We're showing him that he never really had you. That the version of yourself you showed him was the smallest, quietest version possible, and he was too blind to see there was more underneath. What if there isn't more? Then you wouldn't be here. He said it simply, like it was obvious. Emily, weak people don't agree to transform themselves in 3 weeks. They don't walk up to strangers at galleries. They don't sit across from men they barely know and admit their deepest insecurities. You're already stronger than you think. You just need to start believing it. Something in Emily's chest cracked open. Not breaking, more like releasing. She blinked hard against the sudden sting in her eyes. I don't know how, she whispered. I know, that's why I'm here. Luca's voice softened. Tomorrow we're going to work on your story. The version of yourself you're going to present to the world. It needs to be true enough to be believable, impressive enough to be memorable. We'll practice until it feels natural. Luca, why are you doing this, really? He considered her for a long moment. Because I see people clearly. It's a skill I've developed out of necessity. And I see that you've been treated like you're ordinary when you're anything but. Someone needed to tell you that. Might as well be me. It wasn't really an answer, but Emily didn't push. Somehow she understood that Luca's motivations were complicated, layered in ways he wasn't ready to explain. That was fine. She had her own complicated reasons for agreeing to this. They spent the rest of lunch talking about logistics. The wedding was in 2.5 weeks. Between now and then, they'd meet daily, sometimes for hours, sometimes just for quick check-ins. Luca would teach her how to navigate formal events, how to read a room, how to project confidence even when she felt like falling apart. What about your work? Emily asked. Don't you have a job? I make my own schedule. He signed the check. Besides, this is work, just a different kind. That night, Emily lay in bed scrolling through Ryan's Instagram. She hadn't looked in months, had blocked him after the engagement announcement because seeing his happy photos felt like being stabbed repeatedly. But now she unblocked him and went through his feed with cold clinical detachment. Pictures of him and Vanessa at charity galas, art openings, weekend trips to places Emily had never been. Vanessa was beautiful in that effortless way rich people were beautiful. Good bone structure, better skin care, clothes that fit because they were tailored, not bought off racks. She looked like she belonged in Ryan's world in a way Emily never had. But looking at the photos now, Emily saw something she'd missed before. Ryan's smile was the same in every picture. Perfect. Practiced. The kind of smile you gave cameras, not the kind that reached your eyes when you were genuinely happy. She remembered when he used to smile at her differently, back at the beginning, before she'd become convenient instead of valued. That smile had been real. Then she looked at Vanessa's smile. Same thing. Perfect and practiced, and somehow empty. Emily closed Instagram and opened her messages instead, typed out a text to Luca. Were you ever married? The response came immediately. No. Too complicated. Have you ever been in love? A longer pause this time. Then, once. It didn't end well. Why? Just trying to figure you out. Good luck with that. Get some sleep. Tomorrow we work on your origin story. Emily set her phone down and stared at the ceiling. Origin story. Like she was a superhero instead of a waitress who'd let her boyfriend walk all over her for 3 years. But maybe that's what transformation was, taking the worst parts of your story and finding a way to tell them that didn't make you the victim. The next morning, Luca picked her up at 9. They drove to a park Emily had never visited, expensive neighborhood, manicured lawns, the kind of place where people jogged with designer dogs. He led her to a bench overlooking a pond. "We're going to write your story," he said without preamble. "Not the real one. The one we're selling at the wedding. It needs to be believable but impressive, memorable without being flashy." "I don't understand." "People at that wedding are going to ask about you, who you are, what you do, how we met. We need answers that make you interesting without raising suspicion." He pulled out his phone, opened a notes app. "Let's start with your job. Waitress doesn't work. It's the truth. Truth is flexible. You work in hospitality management, coordinating between multiple high-volume establishments. Technically true if we frame it right." Emily frowned. "That feels like lying." "It's recontextualization. You do manage the flow of customers, handle complaints, coordinate with kitchen staff. That's hospitality management." He typed something. "What about education?" "I went to community college for a year, dropped out." "Why?" "Money, and I didn't know what I wanted to study." Luca nodded slowly. "So you pursued targeted professional development instead of traditional education. More practical, more focused. You've been building real-world experience while others were buried in theory. You're really good at this." "I've had practice." He looked at her. "Emily, we're not creating a fake person. We're just highlighting the parts of you that already exist. The strong parts. The interesting parts. The parts Ryan was too stupid to notice." They spent 2 hours crafting her story. Small details, carefully chosen. Where she grew up, true, but framed to sound interesting rather than ordinary. Her interests, reading, which became a passion for contemporary literature and emerging authors. Her plans, vague dreams, became concrete ambitions about opening her own establishment someday. Maybe a bookshop-cafe combination. "Now the hard part," Luca said. "How we met." "What's the story?" "I came into the diner where you work, was immediately drawn to you, asked you out. We've been together for 6 months, engaged for 2. He watched her reaction. Simple. Romantic enough to be believable. Based on the truth, which makes it easier to remember. People are going to wonder why they haven't seen me before. You're private. You don't do social media. You prefer real connections to digital ones. He smiled slightly. It's actually true, isn't it? Emily thought about her barely used Instagram, the Facebook account she checked maybe once a month. Yeah, it's true. See? The best lies are mostly truth with strategic omissions. They practiced. Luca fired questions at her, rapid and random, forcing her to respond without overthinking. What do you do for work? How did you meet? Where did you grow up? What are your plans for the future? Over and over until the answers came naturally, without hesitation or apology. Better, Luca said after the 20th round. You're starting to own it, but you're still dropping your voice at the end of sentences. Keep it level. Confident people don't question themselves mid-sentence. I'm not a confident person. Not yet, but you're getting there. He stood, offered his hand. Come on, we're going somewhere else. Where? You'll see. They drove to an upscale restaurant, the kind with a dress code and reservations booked months in advance. Luca parked and turned to her. We're having dinner here tonight, you and me, as if we were actually engaged. I'm going to treat you the way I would treat my fiancé, and you're going to practice accepting it without deflecting or diminishing yourself. Understood? Emily's heart was hammering. This feels like too much. It's exactly enough. People will be watching us at the wedding. They need to believe we're together, which means you need to be comfortable with me in ways that feel natural, not rehearsed. He got out, came around to open her door. Starting now. Dinner was surreal. Luca ordered wine without asking if she wanted any, made decisions about appetizers and entrees with casual authority. Under normal circumstances, Emily would have found it overbearing, but there was something in the way he did it, like he was taking care of her, not controlling her, that made it feel different. He asked about her family, her real family, not the crafted story version. Emily found herself talking about her mom, who died when she was 19, her dad, who'd remarried someone Emily barely knew and moved to Arizona, the loneliness of being essentially on her own since her early 20s. Is that why you stayed with Ryan so long? Luca asked quietly. Because being with someone felt better than being alone? Probably. Emily took a sip of wine. Is that pathetic? It's human. Everyone wants to be chosen, to matter to someone. He met her eyes. But settling for someone who doesn't see your value isn't the same as being chosen. It's just being convenient. You say that like you know from experience. Luca's expression shifted, something guarded sliding into place. I told you. I was in love once. She chose someone else, someone safer, more predictable. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. I learned that sometimes the person you love doesn't have the capacity to love you back the way you need, so you move on. Did you? Move on? He considered the question. I stopped waiting for her, if that's what you mean. But I think we always carry pieces of the people who changed us, even the ones who hurt us. The vulnerability in his voice caught Emily off guard. For the first time since meeting him, Luca felt like a real person instead of some mysterious figure orchestrating her transformation. He had scars too, just different ones. Thank you, she said quietly. For what? For being honest. For not pretending you have all the answers. She played with her napkin. Everyone always acts like they know exactly what they're doing. It's nice to talk to someone who admits they don't. I know what I'm doing professionally, personally. He laughed softly. I'm as lost as everyone else. I'm just better at hiding it. They finished dinner slowly, conversation drifting between heavy and light. Luca told her about growing up in Italy, moving to the States for university, and never leaving. She told him about her dreams of writing, something she hadn't admitted to anyone in years, not even Ryan. Why don't you write? Luca asked. I don't have anything to say. You have plenty to say. You're just afraid it won't be good enough. He signaled for the check. After the wedding, I want you to write something, anything, a page, a paragraph, it doesn't matter. Just prove to yourself that you can. Walking back to the car, Luca's hand found the small of her back again, that same steadying gesture he'd used at the gallery. Emily was starting to recognize it as his way of anchoring her when she looked like she might drift away. How did I do tonight? She asked as they drove back toward her apartment. You were present, engaged. You asked questions instead of just answering them. That's progress. He glanced at her. Emily, you're doing better than I expected. Most people resist transformation. You're embracing it. I don't feel like I'm embracing it. I feel like I'm barely holding on. Same thing. Transformation always feels like falling apart before it feels like coming together. He pulled up in front of her building. Emily started to get out, then paused. Luca, what happens after the wedding? Assuming this all works and we pull it off. What then? He was quiet for a moment. Then you decide who you want to be. The person who goes back to her old life, or the person who builds a new one? He met her eyes. I suspect I already know which one you'll choose. You seem very sure of me. I'm sure of what I see. You're the one who needs convincing. Emily went inside, feeling both exhausted and strangely energized. The next week and a half passed in a blur of lessons and practice sessions. Luca drilled her on conversation, posture, the subtle art of commanding space without demanding it. They went to more galleries, a museum opening, even a small cocktail party where Emily spent 2 hours talking to strangers without once wishing she could disappear. Each day, she felt a little less like she was faking it. The weekend before the wedding, Luca took her to get her nails done, something Emily had never bothered with before. Then to a jewelry store where he bought her a ring. What are you doing? She asked as he slid the diamond onto her finger. Making it believable. Engaged women wear engagement rings. He adjusted it slightly. Besides, you need to get used to wearing it. Practice. The ring was beautiful, too beautiful for someone like her. But looking at it on her hand, Emily felt something shift, like she was stepping into a role that might actually fit. That night she stood in front of her mirror in the emerald dress, hairstyled the way Andre had taught her, makeup carefully applied. The woman looking back was a stranger. but not in a bad way. She took a picture and sent it to Luca. Final dress rehearsal. How do I look? His response came immediately, like someone worth remembering. Emily stared at the message for a long time. Then she looked at herself in the mirror again and tried to see what Luca saw. Not the waitress who'd let herself become invisible, not the girlfriend who'd been discarded via text. Someone else. Someone stronger. Maybe she was starting to believe it too. The morning of the wedding arrived with rain. Emily stood at her window watching water stream down the glass, wondering if it was some kind of sign. The universe telling her this was a terrible idea, that she should stay home, text Luca some excuse, go back to being invisible where it was safe. Her phone buzzed. Luca. I'll be there at 2. Weather won't be an issue. The ceremony is indoors, she texted back. I know. Are you nervous? Emily stared at the question. Nervous didn't begin to cover it. She felt like her skin was too tight, like her heart was trying to climb out of her chest, like every cell in her body was screaming at her to run. Terrified, she typed. Good. That means you care about the outcome. I'll see you soon. Emily set the phone down and looked at the emerald dress hanging on her closet door. 3 weeks ago, she would have laughed at the idea of wearing something like that, would have dismissed it as too much, too noticeable, too everything she wasn't. Now she couldn't imagine wearing anything else. She showered, taking her time, letting the hot water ease some of the tension from her shoulders. Andre had made her promise to come by the salon that morning for a final touch-up on her hair, and she'd sat in his chair at 10 a.m. while he worked his magic, chattering the whole time about how good she looked, how this Ryan guy was going to kick himself when he saw her. You're going to walk in there like you own the place, Andre had said, spinning her chair to face the mirror. And he's going to realize he threw away a diamond because he thought it was just glass. Emily had tried to smile, but her reflection looked back with eyes that were still uncertain, still scared. Now, standing in her apartment with 2 hours until Luca arrived, she forced herself to get ready. Makeup first, following the steps Margot had taught her. Foundation that evened her skin without looking like a mask. Eyeshadow and subtle bronzes that made her hazel eyes look more green than brown. Mascara that didn't clump. Lipstick in a shade Margot called Confident Rose that made her look like she had opinions worth hearing. The dress slid on like it had been made for her. Maybe it had been, in a way. Margot had taken it to a tailor for adjustments, ensuring it fit perfectly at the waist, fell exactly right at the knee. The emerald fabric caught the light, made her skin look luminous instead of pale. Shoes next. Heels that added 3 inches to her height, making her feel taller than she'd ever felt. She practiced walking in them across her small apartment, the way Luca had made her practice dozens of times over the past 3 weeks. The ring came last. She'd been wearing it around her apartment for the past week, getting used to the weight of it. Now she slid it onto her finger and felt that same strange shift she'd felt the first time. Like she was putting on armor instead of jewelry. Her phone buzzed again. Luca. Outside. Emily grabbed her clutch. Another purchase from Margot, cream leather that cost more than her monthly grocery budget, and took one last look in the mirror. The woman staring back still didn't quite feel real, but she looked strong, composed, like someone who belonged at a wedding at the Ashford estate. She took a breath and headed downstairs. Luca was waiting by his car, and Emily faltered for a second on the bottom step. He was wearing a suit she hadn't seen before, charcoal gray that fit him like it had been painted on, crisp white shirt, tie in a shade of blue so dark it was almost black. He looked dangerous and elegant in equal measure. He looked up when he heard her heels on the concrete, and something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe. Or appreciation. It was gone too quickly to name. Emily. He said her name like he was testing it. You look perfect. I feel like I'm going to throw up. Don't. That dress is too expensive to ruin. He opened the car door for her, hand extended to help her in. The gesture was so automatic now, so practiced, that Emily took it without thinking. We need to talk about what happens when we arrive. I thought we already covered this. We covered the basics. But there are going to be moments that require improvisation. People will ask invasive questions. Ryan will probably try to talk to you alone. Vanessa might see you as a threat. He pulled into traffic, navigating with the same easy confidence he brought to everything. You need to be ready to adapt. What if I can't? You will. You've been adapting for 3 weeks. This is just one more performance. He glanced at her. Emily, I need you to trust me today. Completely. Can you do that? She thought about all the times over the past 3 weeks when Luca had pushed her outside her comfort zone. The gallery, the restaurant, the cocktail party where she'd spent 2 hours talking to a venture capitalist about books and somehow held her own. Every time she'd wanted to run. Every time he'd steadied her. Yes, she said, I trust you. Good, because we're about to walk into a room full of people who are going to judge you based on 30 seconds of first impressions. But you're not going to let them see any fear. You're going to walk in there like you belong because you do. We've earned this moment. The Ashford estate sat on 20 acres just outside the city, all manicured lawns and old money elegance. The main building was a restored Victorian mansion that had been converted into an event space, complete with gardens and a ballroom that could hold 200 people comfortably. Cars lined the circular driveway, Mercedes, BMWs, one actual Bentley that made Luca's sedan look modest by comparison. Emily's stomach twisted. These are Ryan's people? These are Vanessa's people. Ryan just married into them. Luca pulled up to the valet stand. Remember, you're not here to impress them. You're here to remind Ryan what he lost. Everything else is secondary. The valet opened Emily's door. She stepped out carefully, mindful of the heels and the rain that had finally stopped but left the ground damp. Luca appeared at her side immediately, offering his arm. Ready? He asked quietly. Emily slipped her hand through his elbow, felt the solid warmth of him beside her. No, but let's do it anyway. They walked up the stone steps together, through the ornate front doors, into a foyer that looked like something from a period drama, all dark wood and crystal chandeliers and flowers that probably cost more than Emily made in a month. People were everywhere, clusters of guests in expensive clothes, holding champagne flutes, speaking in those low murmurs that rich people seem to perfect. A few heads turned when Emily and Luca entered. Not everyone, but enough to make her aware of being watched. She felt Luca's hand cover hers where it rested on his arm, warm, steadying. Breathe, he murmured. You're doing fine. A woman approached them, middle-aged, designer dress, smile that didn't reach her eyes. Welcome. Are you friends of the bride or groom? Groom, Luca said smoothly. Old friends of Ryan's. This is Emily. The woman's eyes sharpened with recognition. Emily, of course. Ryan mentioned you might come. How lovely. The words were kind, but the tone wasn't. I'm Margaret, Vanessa's aunt. The ceremony will begin in about 20 minutes. There are drinks in the garden room if you'd like to wait there. She drifted away before Emily could respond. Luca guided her toward the garden room, weaving through clusters of guests with practiced ease. A few people nodded at him, recognition without familiarity, like they knew who he was but not well enough to approach. The garden room was all glass walls overlooking the grounds, filled with more guests and more champagne. Luca grabbed 2 flutes from a passing server and handed one to Emily. Don't drink it yet, he said quietly. Just hold it. Gives you something to do with your hands. Emily gripped the stem like a lifeline. How many people are staring at us? 6. Ignore them. He positioned himself so he was between her and most of the room, giving her a moment to adjust. How are you feeling? Like everyone knows I don't belong here. They don't know anything, they're just curious because you're new and you're with me. He sipped his champagne. Emily, look at me. She did. His eyes were steady, calm, absolutely certain. You belong here just as much as anyone in this room. More than most of them, actually, because you earned your way here through actual growth instead of inheritance. Do you understand? I'm trying to. Try harder. But his voice was gentle. We're about to... Emily? The voice cut through the room like a knife. Emily's whole body went rigid. She knew that voice, had heard it say her name 1,000 times over 3 years, had heard it say goodbye through a text message screen. She turned slowly. Ryan stood 3 feet away, champagne in hand, wearing a tuxedo that fit him perfectly, because of course it did. He looked exactly like he always looked, handsome in that conventional way, brown hair styled just so, smile that had charmed her into trusting him, but his eyes were wide with something that looked like shock. Ryan. Emily's voice came out steadier than she expected. Congratulations. He seemed to catch himself, forcing his expression into something more neutral. Thank you. So glad you came. I wasn't sure if you would. His eyes darted to Luca, questions forming behind them. And you brought someone. This is Luca. Emily felt Luca's hand settle at the small of her back, that gesture that had become so familiar over the past 3 weeks. My fiancé. Ryan's face went blank. Just for a second, but Emily saw it. The calculation, the confusion, the realization that she wasn't here alone and vulnerable like he'd probably expected. Fiancé, he repeated. Wow. That's great. Really great. He stuck out his hand to Luca. Ryan Cole. I'm the groom. Luca de Luca. Luca shook his hand, and Emily noticed how Ryan had to look up slightly to meet his eyes. Congratulations on your wedding. Emily's told me a lot about you. Has she? Ryan's laugh was forced. Nothing too terrible, I hope. Nothing you don't deserve. Luca's smile was pleasant, but there was steel underneath. She's remarkably generous, actually. More than I would be in her position. The words hung in the air for a beat too long. Ryan's smile faltered. Well, I'm glad you're both here. Vanessa's been curious about you, Emily. She'll want to say hello. He looked at Emily again, and there was something in his expression she couldn't quite read. You look different. People change, Emily said simply. Yeah, I guess they do. He glanced over his shoulder where someone was waving at him. There are a lot of people I need to greet, but we should talk later, catch up. Maybe. Emily didn't commit to anything. Enjoy your day, Ryan. He walked away and Emily felt like she might collapse. Her hands were shaking so hard the champagne was sloshing in the glass. Luca took it from her gently, set it on a nearby table. You did perfectly, he said quietly. Calm, composed. You didn't apologize or diminish yourself. That's exactly what we needed. Did you see his face? I saw. Luca's expression was satisfied. He wasn't expecting you, and he certainly wasn't expecting me. That first encounter sets the tone for everything else. I think I'm going to be sick. No, you're not. You're going to breathe, and then we're going to circulate for a few minutes before the ceremony starts. Let people see you. Let them wonder who you are. His hand found hers, squeezed gently. You're doing beautifully, Emily. Don't doubt yourself now. The next 15 minutes blurred together. Luca introduced her to 3 different people, a couple who owned an art gallery, a man who did something in commercial real estate, a woman who ran a nonprofit. Each time, Emily fell back on the story they'd crafted together. Hospitality management. Meeting Luca at the diner. 6 months together, engaged for 2. The lies came easier now, smoothed by repetition. But underneath the performance, she was hyper-aware of eyes on her, of whispered conversations that stopped when she got too close, of the way people looked at her and then at Luca and back again, clearly trying to figure out how those 2 things went together. Then someone announced that the ceremony was starting, and the crowd began moving toward the ballroom. Luca guided Emily to a seat near the back, close enough to be seen, far enough to avoid being in the center of attention. Strategic positioning, he murmured as they sat. We want to be noticed without being obvious. The ceremony itself was beautiful in that expensive, impersonal way. Flowers everywhere, string quartet playing something classical, bridesmaids in coordinated dresses that probably cost more than Emily's monthly rent. Ryan stood at the altar looking nervous but happy, straightening his bow tie every few seconds. Then the music changed and Vanessa appeared. Emily had seen pictures, but pictures didn't capture the reality of her. Vanessa Whitmore was stunning, tall, elegant, the kind of beauty that came from good genes and better resources. Her dress was a masterpiece of lace and silk, fitted perfectly, train that spread behind her like water. She walked down the aisle with the confidence of someone who'd never doubted she belonged anywhere. Emily felt something twist in her chest. Not jealousy exactly, more like the confirmation of every insecurity she'd carried for the past 6 months. This was what Ryan wanted, what he'd left her for. Someone who looked like she stepped out of a magazine, someone who fit into this world without having to fake it. Luca's hand found hers in her lap, fingers threading through hers. The gesture was hidden from view by their positioning, but Emily felt the warmth of it anchor her. Don't, he whispered so quietly only she could hear. Don't compare yourself to her. She's pretty, so are you. Different doesn't mean less. Emily squeezed his hand, grateful for the steady presence beside her. The ceremony was short. Traditional vows, exchange of rings, the priest pronouncing them married. When Ryan kissed Vanessa, there was polite applause. Emily clapped along with everyone else, and somewhere in the mechanical motion of her hands, she felt something release in her chest. This was it, the moment she'd been dreading for weeks. And she'd survived it. She was here, she was standing, she hadn't fallen apart. The recessional music started, and the newlyweds walked back down the aisle together. As they passed Emily's row, Vanessa's eyes landed on her. There was a flash of something, recognition maybe, or assessment. Then she was past, and the moment was gone. "Come on," Luca said, standing and offering his hand. "Reception's in the main ballroom. That's where the real work begins." The ballroom was enormous, all white and gold, tables arranged in perfect circles around a dance floor. A band was setting up in one corner, bar in another, servers already circulating with trays of hors d'oeuvres that looked like tiny works of art. Luca found their table, number 12, middle distance. Good sight lines to the head table, but not close enough to seem presumptuous. Emily sat and tried not to think about how much this whole event probably cost. More than she'd make in a year. Maybe more than she'd make in 5 years. "You're thinking too much," Luca observed, sitting beside her. "I'm thinking exactly the right amount." She watched the room fill with guests, everyone finding their seats, the low roar of conversation building. "Luca, what if someone asks questions we haven't prepared for?" "Then you improvise. You're smarter than you think, Emily. Trust your instincts." He paused as a server approached with champagne. "Besides, I'll be right here. I'm not leaving you alone." The other seats at their table filled quickly. A couple in their 50s who owned something in manufacturing. A younger pair who worked in tech. A single woman, maybe Emily's age, who introduced herself as Claire and worked in event planning. "So how do you know Ryan and Vanessa?" Claire asked, directing the question at Emily. "Ryan and I are old friends," Emily said, falling into the script. "We lost touch for a while, but he was kind enough to invite me." "And you brought your fiancé. How sweet." Claire's smile was pleasant, but her eyes were calculating. "When's the wedding?" "We haven't set a date yet," Luca said smoothly, his hand finding Emily's on the table. Still enjoying being engaged. The conversation flowed around them, polite small talk about work, the venue, how beautiful Vanessa looked. Emily participated when directly addressed, but mostly she observed. Watched how people interacted, the subtle hierarchies in who spoke to whom, the way certain names made people lean forward with interest. Then Ryan and Vanessa made their entrance to applause, and the reception officially began. Dinner was served, multiple courses, each one more elaborate than the last. Emily picked at her food, too aware of her stomach churning to actually eat much. Luca kept up a steady stream of quiet observations between courses, pointing out people, explaining connections, keeping her grounded. "See the man at table 4, silver hair, talking to the woman in red?" Luca's voice was low, meant only for her. "That's Marcus Whitmore, Vanessa's father." Emily looked. Marcus Whitmore was exactly what she'd expected. Older, distinguished, the kind of presence that suggested power even from across a room. He was laughing at something someone said, but his eyes were sharp, taking in everything. "He's the reason you're here," Emily said quietly. "The access you needed." "Partially. But that's not all you are." Luca met her eyes. "You know that, right? This started as a transaction, but you're not just a tool to me, Emily. You're—" He paused, seemed to reconsider. "You matter. As a person." Before Emily could respond, someone tapped a microphone. The best man stood, preparing to give a speech. Emily settled back in her chair, Luca's words still echoing in her head. The speeches were exactly what she'd expected. The best man told embarrassing stories about Ryan's college years, made jokes about marriage being a life sentence, toasted to the happy couple. Vanessa's maid of honor gave a tearful speech about growing up together, about how perfect Ryan was for her best friend, about happily ever after. Emily felt Luca's hand find hers under the table again, steady, grounding. Then Ryan stood to give his own speech, and Emily's whole body tensed. "Thank you all for being here," Ryan said, smiling at the room. "Vanessa and I are so grateful to have you all share this day with us. It means the world." He looked down at his new wife. "I used to think I knew what I wanted. had it all planned out. But then I met Vanessa and realized I'd been settling for comfortable instead of reaching for extraordinary. She challenges me, inspires me, makes me want to be better. The words landed like punches. Settling for comfortable. Emily's face felt hot. Luca's hand tightened on hers. So here's to finding the right person, Ryan continued, raising his glass. Even if it takes a while to recognize them. Even if you have to let go of the wrong ones first. The room erupted in applause and laughter. Emily clapped mechanically, smile frozen on her face. Inside she was screaming. He'd actually said it, actually called her settling, called her the wrong one, in front of 200 people. Breathe, Luca said quietly. Just breathe. I'm going to kill him. Later. Right now, you're going to smile and act like his words meant nothing, because that's what will hurt him most. Luca's voice was calm, but there was an edge to it. Emily, look at me. She did. His eyes were dark, angry on her behalf. He's trying to justify his choices by diminishing you. It's pathetic and transparent, and everyone in this room who actually knows him can see right through it. Don't give him the satisfaction of a reaction. Emily took a shaky breath, then another, forced her face into neutrality, even though everything in her wanted to stand up and scream that she'd loved Ryan for 3 years, and he'd thrown it away for someone shinier. The band started playing. Ryan and Vanessa took the floor for their first dance, and Emily watched them spin together, perfect and practiced, and exactly what everyone expected. Dance with me, Luca said suddenly. What? When this song ends and the floor opens up, dance with me. He stood, offering his hand. Let them see you happy. Let them see you've moved on. Emily let him pull her to her feet. They waited at the edge of the floor, Luca's hand warm at her waist. When the song changed and other couples started joining Ryan and Vanessa, Luca led Emily into the crowd. She'd been worried about this. Had practiced with him twice, stumbling over his feet in her apartment while he counted beats and told her to relax. But now, with his hand steady on her back and the music swelling around them, it felt almost natural. You're doing well, Luca murmured, guiding her through a turn. I'm pretending to do well. There's a difference. Not one that anyone can see. He pulled her slightly closer. Emily, Ryan's watching us. Is he? Has been since we stepped onto the floor. So has Vanessa. So smile like you're exactly where you want to be. Emily looked up at him. Luca was watching her with that same intense focus he'd shown since the beginning, like she was the only person in the room worth paying attention to. And maybe it was the champagne or the adrenaline or 3 weeks of transformation finally clicking into place. But Emily found herself smiling. Really smiling. Not the forced version she'd been wearing all day. There she is, Luca said softly. That's the person I've been waiting to see. The song ended. Luca led her off the floor and back toward their table, but they didn't make it. Ryan appeared in their path, Vanessa beside him, both wearing matching polite smiles. Emily, Vanessa said, extending her hand, we haven't officially met. I'm Vanessa. Emily. She shook the offered hand, noting how perfectly manicured Vanessa's nails were. Congratulations. It's a beautiful wedding. Thank you. Ryan's told me so much about you. Vanessa's smile was warm, but her eyes were cold. It's nice to finally put a face to the name. I'm sure he's told you all the good parts, Emily said. All parts. Vanessa's gaze slid to Luca. And you must be the fiancé. Luca. Was it? Luca de Luca. He shook her hand with the same easy charm he'd shown everyone else. Lovely ceremony. Your family knows how to throw an event. We do our best. Vanessa looked between them. Ryan mentioned you two met recently. 6 months, was it? About that, Emily confirmed. Fast engagement. When you know, Luca said smoothly. His arm slid around Emily's waist, proprietary and natural. I wasn't going to let her get away. Ryan was staring at Emily like he'd never seen her before. You look really different, Em. People change when they're happy, Emily said. The words came out before she could stop them, sharp and pointed. Ryan flinched. Vanessa's smile tightened. Well, we're so glad you could make it, Vanessa said, recovering quickly. We should mingle, darling. So many people to greet. She tugged gently on Ryan's arm. Enjoy the evening, both of you. They drifted away into the crowd. Emily let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. That was perfect, Luca said. You didn't back down, didn't apologize, just met them exactly where they were. I wanted to punch him. I know, but you didn't. That's growth. He guided her back toward their table where dessert was being served. How are you holding up? Surprisingly okay. Emily sat, accepted a plate of something chocolate and elaborate. Is it wrong that I enjoyed watching him squirm? Not even a little bit. Luca's smile was satisfied. He expected you to show up timid and apologetic. Instead, you walked in confident and engaged to someone he doesn't understand. It's shaken his entire narrative about the breakup. Good. Emily took a bite of dessert. It was too sweet, but she ate it anyway, needing the sugar rush to keep her energy up. When can we leave? Not yet. I still need to talk to Marcus Whitmore. That's the whole point, remember? Right. Your access. Emily had almost forgotten. When are you planning to approach him? After the cake cutting, when people start to relax. Luca's eyes were already scanning the room, tracking Marcus's position. I need you with me when I do. Why? Because showing up with you makes me more approachable, less aggressive. A man in love is less threatening than a man alone. He looked at her. Can you do one more performance tonight? Emily thought about it, thought about how tired she was, how much energy she'd already spent just getting through the ceremony and dinner. But she'd come this far. Might as well finish it. Yes, she said. I can do it. They waited. Watched the cake cutting, the tossing of the bouquet that some single woman in her 20s caught with aggressive determination. The room slowly relaxed, people drinking more, laughing louder, the formality of the evening giving way to actual celebration. Then Luca stood, offering Emily his hand. Time to make our move. They crossed the ballroom together. Marcus Whitmore was standing near the bar, talking to two other men in expensive suits. Luca approached with careful timing, waiting for a pause in conversation. Mr. Whitmore, Luca said, voice warm but respectful. I don't want to interrupt, but I wanted to introduce myself. Luca de Luca. Marcus turned, assessing Luca with sharp eyes that missed nothing. De Luca. I know that name. Real estate, isn't it? Acquisitions? Among other things. Luca shook his hand. This is my fiancée, Emily. She's an old friend of Ryan's. Ah. Marcus's attention shifted to Emily. So you're the ex. Ryan mentioned you might come. Emily felt her face heat, but she kept her voice steady. Former friend, we've both moved on to better things. Marcus laughed, genuine and surprised. I like you. You've got spine. He looked at Luca. You did well for yourself. I know, Luca said simply. Mr. Whitmore, I was hoping we might set up a meeting sometime. I have a few acquisition opportunities I think might interest you. Commercial properties in the downtown corridor. Marcus's expression sharpened. You're making a business pitch at my daughter's wedding? I'm making a connection. The pitch comes later, if you're interested. Luca's tone was respectful but confident. I wouldn't waste your time with anything that wasn't worth hearing. Marcus studied him for a long moment. Then he pulled out a business card. Call my office Monday. We'll see if your opportunities are as interesting as you think. Thank you. Luca pocketed the card. Enjoy the rest of your evening. They walked away and Emily felt Luca's whole body relax slightly. Mission accomplished. That's it? She asked. That's what you needed? That's the door opening. What happens next depends on whether I can deliver on what I promised. He looked down at her. But yes, that's it. We can leave now if you want. Emily glanced back at the ballroom. At Ryan dancing with Vanessa, surrounded by friends and family. At the life he'd built without her. A month ago, seeing this would have destroyed her, would have confirmed every fear that she wasn't enough, wasn't worth keeping. Now she just felt tired. And maybe, underneath the exhaustion, something that felt like closure. Yeah, she said. Let's go. They slipped out quietly, retrieving their coats from the attendant and walking out into the cool night air. The rain had stopped completely, leaving everything smelling clean and new. Luca's car appeared from the valet, and he opened Emily's door like he had a dozen times before. The drive back to her apartment was quiet. Emily leaned her head against the window, watching the city slide past, processing everything that had happened. She'd done it, actually done it, walked into that wedding, stood tall, didn't let Ryan's words break her. "You were incredible tonight," Luca said, breaking the silence. "I was terrified." Terrified and incredible aren't mutually exclusive. He pulled up in front of her building. "Emily, I meant what I said earlier. You're not just a transaction to me. This, what we've done over the past 3 weeks, it matters. It matters to me, too." She looked at him, this man who'd appeared out of nowhere and somehow changed everything. "What happens now?" "Now you decide who you want to be. The person who goes back to hiding, or the person who keeps growing." Luca's expression was serious. "I told you at the beginning, after the wedding you get to choose, so choose, Emily. What do you want?" She thought about the diner, the tiny apartment, the life she'd been living for the past 4 years. Safe, predictable, small. Then she thought about the past 3 weeks, the galleries, the restaurants, the conversations with strangers that didn't make her want to disappear, the feeling of walking into a room and knowing she belonged there. "I don't want to go back," she said quietly. "I don't want to be invisible anymore." Luca's smile was slow and genuine. "Good. Then we keep going." "Keep going how?" "That's what we figure out together." He reached over, squeezed her hand gently. "Get some rest. We'll talk tomorrow. And Emily?" He waited until she met his eyes. "Thank you. For trusting me. For being brave enough to try." Emily got out of the car feeling like she was floating, walked up to her apartment in a daze. Inside, she kicked off the heels, let the dress pool on her bedroom floor, stood in front of her mirror in just her slip and looked at herself. The woman staring back was different. Not just the hair or the makeup or the expensive clothes, something deeper, something in her eyes, in the way she held her shoulders, something that said she'd walked through fire and come out stronger. Her phone buzzed, text from Jenna. "Tell me everything, and I mean everything." Emily smiled, texted back, "Tomorrow, promise. Too tired to type it all now." Then another text, this one from an unknown number. "Em, it's Ryan. Can we talk?" She stared at the message for a long moment. A month ago, she would have responded immediately, desperate for any scrap of attention from him. Would have agreed to meet, listened to whatever he wanted to say, probably apologized for existing. Now she just deleted it. Then she blocked the number. Emily fell asleep that night with the ring still on her finger, dreaming of tomorrow. Emily woke the next morning to 17 missed calls. She stared at her phone through bleary eyes, brain still foggy with sleep. 10 calls from Ryan, 3 from numbers she didn't recognize, 4 from Jenna, each one increasingly frantic. The last voicemail was from 2 hours ago. She sat up slowly, the emerald dress still on her bedroom floor where she'd dropped it, the engagement ring still on her finger catching the morning light. For a disoriented moment, she wondered if last night had actually happened or if she'd dreamed the whole thing. Then she played Jenna's voicemail. "Em, oh my God, what did you do? It's all over Instagram. Everyone's talking about it. Ryan's ex showed up looking like a literal goddess with some mystery man, and now people are losing their minds trying to figure out who you are. Call me back. Seriously, call me right now." Emily's stomach dropped. She opened Instagram with shaking hands, and there it was. Someone had posted a photo from the wedding, her and Luca on the dance floor, his hand at her waist, her looking up at him with that smile she hadn't even realized she was wearing. The caption read, "Who is she?" Ryan's ex came with this gorgeous mystery man, and they're engaged. The plot twist nobody saw coming. 300 likes, 72 comments, people dissecting every detail of her dress, her hair, speculating about Luca's identity. Someone had already figured out his name and linked to his business profile. Another person claimed to have sat at their table and described Emily as quiet but classy, definitely not what we expected. Emily felt like she couldn't breathe. This was supposed to be one night, one performance, not this public dissection of her life by strangers. Her phone rang. "Luca, have you seen it?" she asked instead of hello. "I've seen it. Are you okay?" "I don't know." Emily scrolled through more comments, each one making her chest tighter. "This is too much. I didn't sign up for people analyzing me online." "I know. I'm sorry. I should have anticipated this." Luca's voice was calm, but she could hear the concern underneath. "People at that wedding are bored and rich. You gave them something to talk about. It'll die down in a few days. What if it doesn't? Then we deal with it. But Emily, listen to me. Nothing in those comments changes what actually happened last night. You walked in there strong, you held your ground, and you walked out stronger. That's real. The Instagram gossip isn't. Emily wanted to believe him, but seeing herself dissected by strangers felt like being exposed in a way she'd never prepared for. She'd spent her whole life trying to be invisible, and now people were putting her under a microscope. I need to see you, Luca said. Can I come over? When? I'm downstairs. Emily looked out her window. Sure enough, Luca's car was parked on the street, and she could see him leaning against it, phone to his ear, looking up at her building. You're already here? I figured you'd need someone when you saw the posts. Get dressed. We're going somewhere you can breathe. 30 minutes later, Emily was in his car wearing jeans and an oversized sweater, hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, no makeup. Back to looking like herself instead of the polished version from last night. Somehow that made her feel worse, like she'd been caught playing dress-up and now everyone could see the fraud. Luca drove them out of the city toward the coast. They didn't talk much. Just the radio playing something instrumental, the sound of tires on asphalt, the gradual shift from buildings to trees to open sky. He parked at a beach overlook, one of those spots tourists rarely found, just rocks and sand and water stretching to the horizon. They got out and walked down to the shore, and Emily felt something in her chest start to loosen. I used to come here when I first moved to the States, Luca said, hands in his pockets, staring out at the waves. Whenever things felt too complicated or I couldn't figure out which direction to go, something about the ocean makes problems feel smaller. Does it work? Sometimes. He looked at her. Talk to me, Emily. What are you actually afraid of? She picked up a smooth stone, turned it over in her hands. That people will look too close and realize I'm nobody. That this whole thing was just pretend, and now everyone's going to see through it. You're not pretend. The woman who walked into that wedding last night was real. Maybe not the whole truth, but not fake either. Luca sat down on a large rock, gestured for her to join him. What do you think would happen if people knew the real story? That you're a waitress, that you and I aren't actually engaged, that all of this was strategic? They'd laugh at me, say I was pathetic for needing to fake a whole new life just to face my ex. Maybe some would, but some would probably think you were brave. That you took control of a situation that hurt you and turned it into something empowering. He paused. Emily, you keep waiting for permission to be proud of yourself. I can't give you that. Only you can. I don't know how. Start by acknowledging what you've actually accomplished. 3 weeks ago, you could barely make eye contact with strangers. Last night, you danced in front of 200 people and didn't apologize once for existing. That's not nothing. Emily threw the stone into the water, watched the ripples spread. What happens now? With us, I mean. The wedding's over. You got your meeting with Marcus Whitmore, so what's left? Luca was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was careful. That depends on what you want. We could end it here. You go back to your life. I go back to mine. We say thank you and part ways. Is that what you want? No. He said it simply, no hesitation. But what I want isn't the point. This was always about you choosing who you want to be. I'm not going to make that choice for you. What if I don't know what I want? Then take time to figure it out. But Emily, you need to understand something. He turned to face her fully. What we built over the past 3 weeks, the confidence, the presence, the ability to stand in your own power, that doesn't disappear just because the wedding's over. That's yours now. Whether we keep working together or not. Working together on what? Luca smiled slightly. That's the question, isn't it? I have some ideas, but I need to know you're actually interested before I suggest them. Emily looked at him, this man who'd appeared out of nowhere and somehow saw past every defense she'd built. She thought about going back to the diner, to her tiny apartment, to the life where she'd been invisible and safe and slowly disappearing. Then she thought about the gallery, the restaurant, the feeling of walking into a room and knowing she had a right to be there. Tell me your ideas, she said. Luca's expression shifted, something like relief crossing his face. Okay, first, I think you need to quit the diner. I can't afford to quit. You can if you work for me instead. He held up a hand before she could protest. Hear me out. I need someone to help coordinate my acquisitions, handle communications, manage relationships with clients. You've spent the past 3 weeks learning how to navigate social situations, read people, present yourself professionally. Those are exactly the skills I need. I don't have any experience in real estate. You didn't have any experience being confident either, but you learned. Luca's voice was patient. Emily, I'm not offering you charity. I'm offering you a job because I think you'd be good at it. The pay would be triple what you make at the diner, and the work would actually challenge you instead of slowly killing your spirit. Emily's heart was racing. What if I'm terrible at it? Then I'll train you until you're not. But I don't think you will be. He stood, brushing sand off his jeans. Think about it. No pressure. But the offer's real. They spent the rest of the morning walking the beach, talking about everything and nothing. Luca told her more about his work, the properties he was trying to acquire, the politics of commercial real estate. Emily found herself asking questions, actually engaging with the information instead of just nodding along like she would have a month ago. By the time they drove back to the city, she felt steadier. The Instagram posts still bothered her, but they felt less catastrophic. Just noise that would eventually fade. Luca dropped her off at her apartment with a promise to call tomorrow. Emily went inside and finally called Jenna back. Oh my God, you're alive, Jenna answered. I was starting to think you'd been kidnapped by your hot fiancé. He's not actually my fiancé. What? Emily spent the next hour explaining everything. The deal with Luca, the 3 weeks of transformation, the strategic appearance at the wedding. Jenna listened with increasing disbelief, occasionally interrupting with, Are you kidding me? And this is literally a movie. So what happens now? Jenna asked when Emily finished. He offered me a job. Obviously, you're taking it. It's not that simple. Yes, it is. Em, you hate the diner. You've hated it for years. And this guy is offering you a way out plus a chance to actually use your brain for something other than remembering who wants extra ketchup. Jenna's voice softened. What are you actually afraid of? That I'll fail? That I'm not smart enough or capable enough or go... Stop. You're doing that thing where you decide you're not good enough before even trying. It's annoying and also bullshit. Jenna sighed. Look, I get it. Change is scary. But staying in the same place because you're too afraid to try something new? That's scarier. After they hung up, Emily sat on her couch staring at the ring still on her finger. She should take it off, return it to Luca, go back to her regular life where engagement rings were fantasy instead of strategic props. Instead, she left it on. That night, she dreamed about the diner. Same booth, same orders, same exhausted smiles she wore for customers. But in the dream, she was transparent. People looked right through her, ordered their food from the space where she stood, like she wasn't even there. She woke up gasping. By the time Luca called the next morning, Emily had made her decision. I'll take the job, she said before he could even say hello. Whatever it is, however it works, I want to try. You're sure? No, but I'm doing it anyway. She could hear the smile in his voice. Good. Can you come to my office today? I want to show you what you'll be working on. Luca's office was in a building Emily had walked past 100 times without noticing. Sleek glass exterior, lobby with modern furniture and abstract art, elevators that moved too fast. His suite was on the 15th floor, all clean lines and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. A woman at the reception desk looked up when they entered. Early 40s, perfectly professional, eyes that assessed Emily in one quick glance. Emily, this is Patricia. She manages the office. Luca guided Emily past the desk. Patricia, this is Emily Dawson. She'll be starting next week as my acquisitions coordinator. Patricia's expression didn't change, but Emily saw the calculation happening behind her eyes. Welcome. I'll have HR send over the paperwork. Luca's personal office was even more impressive. Dark wood desk, leather chairs, walls lined with architectural drawings and property photographs. He gestured for Emily to sit. First things first, he said, pulling out a folder. This is what we're currently working on. 3 commercial properties in the downtown corridor, all undervalued because the current owners don't understand their potential. I need someone to coordinate communications with the sellers, schedule meetings, handle the preliminary research on zoning and development potential. Emily flipped through the folder, looking at property assessments and financial projections that might as well have been written in another language. Luca, I don't understand any of this. You will. I'm going to teach you everything I know. But I need you to be willing to learn, to ask questions when you don't understand, to push back when something doesn't make sense. He leaned forward. Emily, I'm not hiring you to be quiet and accommodating. I'm hiring you because you're smart and observant and you notice things other people miss. I need those skills. What if I mess up? Then we fix it and you learn from it. I'm not expecting perfection. I'm expecting effort. He paused. There's one more thing we need to discuss. The engagement. Emily's hand went automatically to the ring. Right. I should give this back. Actually, I think we should keep it going. What? Luca stood, walked to the window. Those Instagram posts from the wedding? That attention? It's actually useful. People are curious about you, about us. That curiosity gives us access to conversations and events we might not otherwise get invited to. Marcus Whitmore's daughter is already following you on Instagram. Emily pulled out her phone, checked. Sure enough, there was Vanessa's verified account among her new followers. Why would she follow me? Because you're a mystery she wants to solve, and mysteries are valuable. He turned back to face her. I'm not suggesting we fake a relationship in private, but in public, for business purposes, I think we should maintain the fiction, at least for a while. It benefits both of us. How does it benefit me? It gives you a reason to be at events you'd never be invited to otherwise, connections you couldn't make on your own, experience in the world I operate in. Luca's expression was serious. Emily, if you're going to work in this industry, you need to understand that perception matters as much as reality. Being my fiancé opens doors. Once they're open, you keep them open by being competent. Emily thought about it. Part of her wanted to say no, to refuse to keep living a lie. But another part, the part that was tired of being invisible, understood what he was offering: access, opportunity, a chance to become someone instead of just surviving as no one. Okay, she said, we keep up the engagement. For business. For business, Luca agreed, but something in his eyes suggested it wasn't quite that simple. Emily gave her notice at the diner that evening. Her manager barely looked up from his paperwork. 2 weeks? He asked. 1. I'm sorry, but I have another opportunity and I need to start soon. He shrugged. Fine. We'll find someone else. That was it. 4 years of her life, of early mornings and late nights and aching feet, dismissed with a shrug. Emily should have felt sad about it. Instead, she felt free. Jenna threw her arms around her during their next shift together. I'm so proud of you, and also devastated because you're leaving me here with Marcus and his terrible jokes. You should quit too. Find something better. Maybe I will. Jenna pulled back, studying Emily's face. You look different. Not just the hair, something else. I feel different. Emily tied her apron, started rolling silverware. Like I'm finally waking up after being asleep for years. Does this mean you're actually into Luca? Like for real, not just the fake engagement thing? Emily had been trying not to think about that. About the way her heart sped up when he called, the way his hand at her back felt like coming home, the way he looked at her sometimes like she was the only person in the room worth seeing. I don't know, she said honestly. It's complicated. When is it not? Jenna laughed. Just don't let him break your heart. You've had enough of that already. Emily's last week at the diner passed quickly. She worked her shifts, trained her replacement, a girl barely out of high school who seemed terrified of everything, and slowly packed up the pieces of her life she wanted to keep. Ryan texted 3 more times, each message more desperate than the last. Em, please talk to me. I need to explain. Then I made a mistake with everything. Finally, Vanessa's been asking questions about you. About us. Please. Emily deleted each one without responding. Whatever Ryan needed to say, she didn't need to hear it. On her last day at the diner, Jenna presented her with a cupcake that had "Congratulations on escaping" written in icing. They ate it together during their break, sitting in the back alley where they'd shared countless conversations over the years. Are you scared? Jenna asked. Terrified. Good. That means it matters. She bumped Emily's shoulder. You're going to be amazing. Just remember us little people when you're making 6 figures and buying designer shoes. The salary's not that good. Yet. Give it time. Emily started her new job on a Monday. She arrived at Luca's office at 8 a.m. sharp, wearing one of the outfits Margot had picked out, trying to project confidence she didn't entirely feel. Patricia showed her to a desk in a smaller office adjacent to Luca's, handed her a laptop and phone, and gave her exactly 3 minutes of instruction before disappearing. Emily stared at the blank computer screen, overwhelmed. Then Luca appeared in her doorway. Good, you're here. We have a meeting at 9 with a potential seller. I need you to take notes, observe the conversation. Tell me afterward what you noticed. What am I supposed to notice? Everything. Body language. Hesitations. What they're not saying. You've gotten good at reading people, Emily. Now I need you to apply that skill professionally. He handed her a folder. Quick background on the property and the seller. Read it in the car. The meeting was with an older man who owned a warehouse on the east side. He was nervous, kept fidgeting with his wedding ring, wouldn't quite meet Luca's eyes. Emily watched the dynamic, the way Luca asked questions that seemed casual but were clearly strategic, the way the seller's shoulders relaxed when Luca mentioned his own family back in Italy. When they got back to the car, Luca looked at her. What did you notice? He doesn't want to sell, Emily said. Not really. Someone's pressuring him. Wife, maybe? Or partners. He kept touching his ring whenever you mentioned money. Luca smiled. Good. What else? He's worried about his employees. Asked 3 different times about what would happen to them. So if you want the property, you need to guarantee their jobs stay intact. Exactly right. Luca pulled into traffic. See? You're already thinking like an acquisitions coordinator. That observation about the employees? That's the leverage we needed. We'll structure the deal to protect their positions, and he'll agree because it lets him save face with whoever's pushing him to sell. Over the next 2 weeks, Emily learned more about commercial real estate than she'd learned about anything in years. Luca was a patient teacher, but he had high expectations. He'd explain something once, answer questions, then expect her to apply it independently. When she made mistakes, and she made plenty, he'd walk her through the correction without making her feel stupid. You're doing well, Patricia said one afternoon, appearing at Emily's desk with a stack of contracts. Better than his last 2 coordinators? They both quit within a month. Why? Couldn't handle the pace, or the pressure, or him. Patricia's expression was unreadable. Luca's not an easy man to work for. He expects excellence and doesn't have much patience for excuses. But he's fair. And if you prove yourself valuable, he's loyal. Emily thought about that as she reviewed the contracts. Luca had been nothing but patient with her, but she'd also seen glimpses of the harder edges Patricia mentioned. The way he dismissed people who didn't meet his standards. The cold anger when a deal fell through because someone hadn't done their research properly. The absolute certainty in his own judgment. He was teaching her to be strong, but there was a cost to that strength. A hardness that came from never letting your guard down. That Friday, Luca told her they were attending a charity gala. Another performance? Emily asked. Another opportunity. Marcus Whitmore is hosting. He wants to discuss the properties I mentioned at the wedding. Luca looked up from his laptop. This is important, Emily. If Whitmore comes in as a partner on these acquisitions, it legitimizes everything we're building, opens doors to bigger deals. What do you need me to do? Just be yourself, the version of yourself you've become. He paused. And wear the emerald dress. It made an impression last time. The gala was at a hotel ballroom downtown, even more elaborate than the wedding. String quartet, ice sculptures, champagne that probably cost more per bottle than Emily used to make in a week. Luca guided her through the crowd with practiced ease, introducing her to developers and investors and people whose names she recognized from business news. Emily fell into the role automatically now, smiled, made small talk, asked intelligent questions about projects and acquisitions. She was still nervous, still second-guessing herself constantly, but she'd learned to hide it better. Then she saw Ryan. He was standing near the bar, Vanessa beside him, both dressed formally. He looked miserable despite the expensive tuxedo, kept checking his phone like he was looking for an escape route. Vanessa was talking to an older couple, animated and charming, everything Ryan's smile wasn't. Emily's first instinct was to turn around, avoid them completely, but Luca's hand found the small of her back, steadying. You don't have to talk to him, he murmured, but you also don't have to run. Your choice. Emily took a breath. chose the harder path. She walked over. Ryan saw her coming and his whole face changed. Relief mixed with anxiety, mixed with something that looked like regret. He said, I didn't know you'd be here. Luca's working with Marcus Whitmore. Why wouldn't I be here? Emily kept her voice neutral, polite. Not warm, but not hostile either. Vanessa turned, assessed Emily with sharp eyes. Emily, what a surprise. You look lovely. Thank you. So do you. Emily meant it. Vanessa was stunning in a red dress that probably cost $5,000. But up close, Emily could see the tension in her jaw, the way her smile didn't quite reach her eyes. Ryan's been trying to reach you, Vanessa said, and there was an edge to her voice. I told him to leave you alone, but apparently he has things he needs to say. Ryan flinched. Ness, don't what? Don't mention that you've been obsessively checking her Instagram? Don't bring up that you called her 12 times after our wedding? Vanessa's smile was razor sharp. I think Emily deserves to know how interested my husband is in his ex. The words hung in the air, toxic and cutting. Emily saw the truth of their marriage in that moment. The cracks beneath the perfect surface, the resentment simmering under expensive clothes and forced smiles. I'm not interested in whatever Ryan needs to say, Emily said quietly. We're done. We've been done. I'm just here to support Luca. She started to walk away, but Ryan grabbed her arm. Please. 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking. Luca appeared at Emily's other side, and his presence shifted the entire dynamic. He didn't say anything, just looked at Ryan's hand on Emily's arm with an expression that made very clear how unacceptable that was. Ryan dropped his hand immediately. We're done here, Luca said, voice calm but absolutely final. He guided Emily away, and she let him, relieved to escape the wreckage of Ryan's marriage. Are you okay? Luca asked when they were out of earshot. Yeah. Emily realized she meant it. I feel bad for them, for how miserable they both looked. But I don't feel bad for me anymore. Good. Because you have nothing to feel bad about. He squeezed her hand gently. Come on. Marcus is waiting. The meeting with Marcus Whitmore went better than expected. He liked their proposal, appreciated the research Emily had compiled on market trends and development potential. By the end of the conversation, he'd agreed to partner on 2 of the 3 properties, bringing capital and connections that would fast-track the entire process. Walking back to the car at midnight, Emily felt like she was floating. We did it, she said. We actually did it. You did it, Luca corrected. That research you put together on zoning changes? That's what convinced him. You proved we knew what we were talking about. Emily stopped walking, turned to face him. Luca, why did you really choose me? For the wedding, for all of this. The real reason. He was quiet for a long moment, studying her face in the streetlight. Because I saw something in you that reminded me of myself. Someone who'd been told they were less than they were, who'd started to believe it. And I thought if I could help you see what I saw, maybe... He trailed off. Maybe I could prove that transformation is actually possible, that we're not stuck being who we were. Are you trying to transform yourself too? Every day. He smiled, but it was sad. The difference is I've been doing it alone. You make it look easier. Emily didn't know what to say to that, so she just stepped closer and, without thinking too hard about it, hugged him. Luca went still for a second. Then his arms came around her, holding her carefully, like she might break. Thank you, Emily whispered, for seeing me when I was invisible. You were never invisible, he said against her hair. Just hidden. There's a difference. They stood there under the streetlight for a long moment, and Emily felt something shift between them. Something that went beyond business arrangements and strategic performances. Something real and complicated and maybe dangerous. But she didn't pull away, and neither did he. They stood under that streetlight for maybe 30 seconds, but it felt longer. When Emily finally pulled back, she could see something in Luca's expression she hadn't seen before. Uncertainty. Like he'd revealed more than he meant to and wasn't sure how to take it back. We should go, he said, voice rougher than usual. It's late. The drive back to her apartment was quiet but not uncomfortable. Emily kept stealing glances at him, trying to reconcile the confident businessman who commanded every room he entered with the man who just admitted he was trying to transform himself too. trying to figure out when exactly this arrangement had stopped being purely strategic and started feeling like something else entirely. He pulled up in front of her building and killed the engine. Sat there for a moment, hands on the steering wheel, clearly working up to saying something. "Emily, we need to talk about what happens next." Her stomach dropped. "Are you ending this?" "No, the opposite, actually." He turned to face her. "The partnership with Marcus is going to mean more events, more visibility. People are going to scrutinize our relationship even harder, and I need to know if you're comfortable with that, or if we need to create an exit strategy." "What kind of exit strategy?" "We stage a breakup. Mutual, amicable. You move on to a different role in the company. I continue solo. We protect your reputation and give you space to build your career independently." He paused. "It's the safer option." "And the other option?" Luca's jaw tightened. "We keep going. Let this evolve into whatever it's becoming, which is messier and more complicated and might blow up in both our faces, but it's also more real." Emily's heart was hammering. "What is it becoming, Luca?" "I don't know, but I think we both feel it." He met her eyes. "I told myself this was just business, that I was helping you because it served my purposes. But somewhere along the way it stopped being that simple." "When?" Emily asked quietly. "The gallery. When you walked up to Robert and actually engaged instead of hiding. I watched you become yourself in real time, and He stopped, shook his head. "I'm not good at this. At being honest about what I want when it's not business related." "What do you want?" "You. Not the performance version, the real person underneath." He said it like it cost him something. "But I need to know you want that too. And not just because I'm convenient or because you're grateful for what we've built together." Emily thought about Ryan, about how she'd confused gratitude and dependency for love, how she'd made herself small trying to be what he needed. Thought about how different this felt, how Luca pushed her to be bigger instead of smaller, stronger instead of weaker. "I don't know what I feel yet," she said honestly, "but I know I don't want to stop. Not the job, not the partnership, not whatever this is between us." She reached for his hand. "Can we just see where it goes? Without deciding everything right now?" Luca's fingers threaded through hers. "Yeah, we can do that." That night, Emily lay in bed turning the conversation over in her mind. This was dangerous territory, getting involved with her boss, blurring the lines between professional and personal, risking everything she'd built if it went wrong. Dr. Morrison would probably have a field day with the power dynamics and emotional complexity, but Emily was tired of playing it safe. Safe had gotten her nowhere for 26 years. The next 3 months passed in a blur of work and growth and figuring out who she was becoming. Emily threw herself into learning everything about acquisitions, zoning laws, market analysis, negotiation tactics. She made mistakes, plenty of them, but Luca was patient in ways that surprised her. When a deal fell through because she'd missed a crucial detail in the contracts, he walked her through what went wrong without making her feel incompetent. "Failure is part of learning," he said, spreading the contracts across his desk. "The only way you'd be worthless to me is if you didn't learn from it." Emily did learn, fast. Patricia started giving her more responsibility, trusting her to handle preliminary negotiations, to coordinate with lawyers and contractors. By the end of month 2, Emily was running point on a smaller acquisition completely independently. The night that deal closed, Luca took her to dinner at the restaurant where they'd practiced being engaged months ago. This time felt different, less like a lesson and more like a celebration. "You did it," he said, raising his wine glass. "Completely on your own. I barely had to touch that negotiation. You reviewed all my work, but I didn't change anything because you got it right." He smiled, genuine pride in his expression. "Emily, you're good at this. Better than you probably realize. I had a good teacher. You had the capability all along. I just gave you permission to use it." He set down his glass. "Have you thought about what comes next? Long term, I mean." Emily had been thinking about it constantly. "I want to keep doing this. Maybe eventually handle bigger acquisitions. Build enough expertise that I'm valuable beyond just working for you." "So you're planning an exit?" "No, but I'm planning to be good enough that staying is a choice, not a necessity." She met his eyes. "I don't want to need you, Luca. I want to choose you. There's a difference." His expression softened. "Yeah, there is." They'd been careful about their personal relationship, keeping things mostly professional at the office. But the boundaries were getting harder to maintain. Sometimes Luca's hand would linger at her back a moment too long. Sometimes Emily would catch him watching her with an expression that had nothing to do with business. Sometimes, late at night when they were reviewing contracts in his office, the air would get heavy with things neither of them was quite ready to say. It was Patricia who finally called it out. She appeared at Emily's desk one afternoon with coffee and a knowing look. "You two are being ridiculous," she said without preamble. "Excuse me?" "You and Luca. The tension is so thick I could cut it with a letter opener. Either do something about it or don't, but stop pretending there's nothing there. It's distracting." Patricia set down the coffee. "For what it's worth, I think you're good for him. He's different since you started. Less closed off." Emily felt her face heat. "We're keeping things professional." "Right, and I'm the Queen of England." Patricia headed back to her desk, then paused. "Just don't hurt each other, okay? You're both fragile in ways you pretend you're not." That conversation stuck with Emily. She'd been so focused on her own transformation that she hadn't paid enough attention to Luca's. But Patricia was right. He was different now than he'd been at the beginning, smiled more easily, talked about his past in Italy without that guarded expression, let his walls down in small increments. The breaking point came on a Tuesday. Emily was in Luca's office reviewing quarterly projections when his phone rang. He glanced at the screen and his whole body went rigid. "I need to take this," he said, voice tight. "Give me a minute." Emily stepped out, but even through the closed door she could hear pieces of the conversation. Luca speaking rapid Italian, his tone sharp and defensive. Then silence. Then something that sounded like breaking glass. She knocked carefully. "Luca?" No response. Emily opened the door slowly. Luca was standing at the window, one hand braced against the glass, breathing hard. His phone was on the floor in pieces. "What happened?" she asked quietly. "My father." He didn't turn around. "He's sick. Cancer. Stage 4. My brother thinks I should come back to Italy." His laugh was bitter. "After 10 years of not speaking to me, now they need something." Emily's chest tightened. "Do you want to go?" "I don't know. We didn't exactly part on good terms." He finally turned to face her, and she saw the cracks in his composure. "I left Italy because they wanted me to take over the family business. Legitimate on the surface, less legitimate underneath. I wanted something different, something clean. My father called me a coward, disowned me, and I haven't been back since." "But he's your father." "He's a stranger who happens to share my DNA." Luca's voice was flat. "Emily, I built everything here from nothing because I refused to compromise my principles. Going back would mean facing everyone who told me I'd fail. Admitting that maybe I missed them despite everything." Emily walked over to him, took his hand carefully. "You don't have to decide right now, but you also don't have to face it alone. Whatever you choose." Something in his expression crumbled. He pulled her into his arms, holding her tight enough that she could feel him shaking. They stood there for a long time, and Emily realized this was the first time she'd seen him actually vulnerable. Not strategic, not controlled, just human and hurting. "Come with me," he said against her hair. "What?" "To Italy. If I go, come with me. I can't—" He pulled back enough to look at her. "I don't want to do this alone." "Luca, that's a huge ask." "I know, and you can say no, but I'm asking anyway." His eyes searched hers. "Please." Emily thought about all the reasons she should say no. The work piling up, the deals that needed attention, the fact that meeting his family meant crossing a line they'd been carefully avoiding. But she thought about him standing at that window looking broken, and she couldn't leave him to face that alone. "Okay," she said, "I'll come." They flew out 3 days later. First-class tickets on a direct flight to Rome. 11 hours of Luca getting progressively more tense. Emily had never left the country before, had barely left the state. Everything felt surreal. The airport, the plane, the Italian countryside spreading below them as they descended. Luca's brother Marco met them at the airport. He looked like a younger version of Luca, same sharp features but softer somehow, less guarded. He and Luca spoke in rapid Italian, tension crackling between them, before Marco seemed to remember Emily was there. "Sorry," he said in accented English. "You must be Emily. The fiancé. Emily glanced at Luca. They'd agreed to maintain that fiction for simplicity, but hearing it from his brother felt different. That's me, she said. The drive to Luca's family home took 2 hours through countryside so beautiful it hurt to look at. Rolling hills, vineyards, old stone buildings that had probably stood for centuries. Luca stared out the window the whole time, jaw tight, saying nothing. The house was massive, 3 stories of weathered stone and terracotta roof, gardens that probably required full-time staff to maintain. Emily felt completely out of her depth. Luca's mother met them at the door. She looked like she'd been beautiful once, and still was. In that way, Italian women somehow managed even in their 60s. Her eyes were red from crying. "Luca," she said, and pulled him into a hug he didn't return. Then she switched to Italian, speaking fast and urgent. Luca responded in the same language, his tone careful, and Emily stood there feeling useless and invisible. Finally, his mother seemed to remember her manners. "You must be Emily. Welcome. Come inside, both of you. We'll talk after you've rested." The guest room they were shown to had 1 bed. Emily looked at Luca questioningly. "They think we're engaged," he said quietly. "It would be strange if we asked for separate rooms." "Right." Emily set down her bag. "Are you okay?" "No, but I will be." He sat on the edge of the bed, running his hands through his hair. "Thank you for coming. I know this is a lot." Emily sat beside him. "Tell me about your father. The real version, not the sanitized one." Luca was quiet for a long moment. He was complicated, loved us fiercely, but on his terms. He built an empire in olive oil distribution, but the way he built it involved compromises I couldn't accept. Bribes, intimidation, connections to people who did worse things. He saw it as necessary. I saw it as corruption. He looked at her. When I told him I was leaving, he said I was throwing away my birthright, that I'd regret choosing my conscience over my family. Do you regret it? Every day. But I'd do it again. His smile was sad. I wanted to prove you could succeed without compromising everything you believe in. I'm still trying to prove it. They went downstairs an hour later. The whole family was gathered. Marco, Luca's mother, 2 sisters Emily hadn't known existed, various cousins and aunts and uncles. Everyone spoke Italian, switching to English periodically for Emily's benefit, but clearly more comfortable in their native language. Dinner was elaborate and overwhelming. Course after course of food Emily couldn't pronounce, wine that tasted like sunshine, conversations that switched between languages so fast she couldn't follow. She watched Luca navigate it all with careful politeness, answering questions about his business, deflecting inquiries about the wedding, maintaining distance even while physically present. After dinner, his mother pulled him aside. Emily watched them talk in the hallway, the conversation growing heated, his mother crying. When Luca came back, his expression was carved from stone. "My father wants to see me," he said quietly. "Tomorrow, alone." That night, lying in the dark with Luca tense beside her, Emily broke the silence. "You don't have to do this if you're not ready." "I do. He's dying. If I don't do it now, I'll regret it forever." He turned to face her. "Emily, I need to tell you something about why I really asked you to come." "Okay." "It's not just because I didn't want to be alone. It's because you remind me that transformation is possible, that people can choose to become better than they were." His voice was rough. "I look at you and see proof that we're not trapped by our pasts, and I need that right now. Need to remember that facing my father doesn't mean becoming him." Emily's throat tightened. "You're nothing like him, Luca. You built something honest, something that doesn't compromise your values. That takes more strength than taking the easy path." "Does it? Because right now it just feels lonely." Emily reached for his hand in the darkness. "You're not alone. Not anymore." He pulled her closer, and they fell asleep like that, tangled together, holding on tight. The next morning, Luca left early to see his father. Emily wandered the gardens, feeling out of place and useless. Marco found her sitting by a fountain, staring at nothing. "He always does this," Marco said in English, sitting beside her. "Carries everything alone, even when we were kids." "Does what?" "Tries to be invincible. After he left, my mother cried for months. My father got angry, then got quiet. Luca just disappeared and never looked back. Marco picked up a pebble, tossed it into the fountain. We all understood why he left. The business my father built, it's successful, but it's also complicated. Luca wanted something cleaner. But leaving the way he did, cutting us all off completely, that hurt. He was protecting himself, Emily said quietly. I know, but it hurt anyway. Marco looked at her. Are you really engaged to him? Emily hesitated, then decided on honesty. It's complicated. Everything with Luca is complicated. He smiled slightly. But I've never seen him look at anyone the way he looks at you. So whatever it is, it matters to him. Don't hurt him. I'm trying not to. Good. Because he's already hurting enough. Luca came back 3 hours later. Emily was in their room when she heard the door open. One look at his face, and she knew it had been bad. He apologized, Luca said, voice hollow. After 10 years, after everything, he apologized. Said he was wrong to choose the business over his son. Asked me to forgive him before he dies. He sat heavily on the bed. And I don't know if I can. Emily sat beside him. You don't have to forgive him right now. Or ever, if you're not ready. But what if I regret it? What if he dies and I'm left with all this anger and no way to resolve it? Then you carry it and you work through it. But you can't force forgiveness just to make things easier. She took his hand. Luca, you're allowed to still be hurt by what he did. Dying doesn't erase the damage. I know, but he looked so small in that hospital bed. Nothing like the man I remembered. And all I could think was that I wasted 10 years being too proud to pick up the phone. His voice broke. What does that make me? Human. Just human. Emily pulled him into her arms. You're allowed to grieve the relationship you should have had while also protecting yourself from the one you did have. Those things can both be true. He held on to her like she was the only solid thing in a shifting world. And maybe she was. They stayed in Italy for 5 more days. Luca visited his father twice more, conversations that left him drained and raw. Emily spent time with his family, learning about who he'd been before he became the man she knew. Saw pictures of him as a child, all serious eyes and careful smiles. Heard stories about his rebellion, his determination, the way he'd always been different from the rest of them. On their last night, Luca's mother cornered Emily in the kitchen. You love him, she said. Not a question. Emily didn't know how to answer. It's complicated. Love usually is. His mother poured wine for both of them. My son has spent 10 years building walls. You're the first person I've seen him let inside. Don't waste that. What if I'm not enough? What if I can't be what he needs? You already are. You're here, aren't you? When he needed someone, you came. That's not nothing. She squeezed Emily's hand. Just don't let him push you away when things get difficult. He'll try. It's what he does. Flying back to the States felt like returning to reality after a strange dream. Luca was quiet the whole flight, processing everything that had happened. Emily let him have the silence, understanding that some things needed to be worked through alone. When they landed, he turned to her in the car. Thank you for everything. I couldn't have done that without you. Yes, you could have, but I'm glad you didn't have to. Emily, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. He took a breath. What are we doing? Really? Because I can't keep pretending this is just business or convenience or strategy. It stopped being that a long time ago. Emily's heart was pounding. This was it. The moment where she had to decide what she actually wanted instead of just reacting to what was happening. I don't know exactly what we are, she said carefully, but I know I don't want to lose it, whatever this is. That's not an answer. No, it's not, because I'm still figuring out who I am when I'm not trying to be what someone else needs. And I can't be in a real relationship until I know that. She met his eyes. But I want to figure it out with you. Not alone. Luca nodded slowly. Okay, then we figure it out together. No more pretending it's fake. No more strategic distance. We just see where this goes, honestly. Honestly, Emily agreed. The next few weeks tested that honesty. Luca's father died 2 weeks after they returned. Luca flew back to Italy for the funeral, and this time Emily stayed behind to manage the business. It was the right call professionally, but it felt wrong personally, leaving him to face that alone after everything. When he came back, he was different, quieter, more withdrawn. He threw himself into work with an intensity that worried Emily, staying late at the office, taking on more projects than was reasonable, avoiding any conversation that veered toward emotional territory. Emily gave him space, but not too much. One night, she found him in his office at 9 p.m., staring at financial projections like they held the secrets of the universe. "Go home, Luca. I'm fine. You're exhausted, and you haven't talked about the funeral or your father or anything real in 2 weeks." She sat on the edge of his desk. "You told me we were doing this honestly. That includes the hard parts." "I don't know what to say. He's gone. I never got the closure I wanted, and I'm angry about it, but I can't even enjoy the anger because he's dead, and being angry at a dead man feels pointless." He looked at her, and she saw how tired he was. "I feel like I'm stuck in this loop of grief and resentment, and I don't know how to get out." "So you work until you're too exhausted to feel it?" "It's better than the alternative." "Is it?" Emily reached for his hand. "Luca, you don't have to be invincible. Not with me. You're allowed to fall apart. But if I fall apart, everything falls apart." "That's not true. The business keeps running. I keep running it. You don't have to hold the whole world up alone." She squeezed his hand. "Let me help carry it. That's what partners do." Something in his expression cracked. "I don't know how to do that. Let someone help, I mean." "Then learn. The way I learned to stop apologizing for existing. The way I learned to stand up straight and look people in the eye. You taught me how to be stronger. Let me teach you how to be vulnerable." Luca pulled her into his arms, and she felt him shudder. Just once, but it was enough. They stood there in his office, holding each other, and Emily felt the dynamic between them shift again. Not leader and student, not boss and employee, just two people who'd found each other in the wreckage of their old lives and were building something new together. The fake engagement ended quietly. No dramatic announcement, just a gradual shift in how they presented themselves. The ring stayed on Emily's finger because by that point it felt like it belonged there, fake or not. People at events stopped asking when the wedding was and started just accepting them as a unit. 6 months after the wedding that started everything, Emily and Luca closed the deal with Marcus Whitmore. 3 properties, all acquired, all being developed into mixed-use spaces that would transform the downtown corridor. It was the biggest success of Luca's career, and Emily had been instrumental in making it happen. They celebrated at the same restaurant where they'd had their first practice dinner. But this time, there was nothing to practice. No performance. Just 2 people who'd built something real out of something that started as strategy. "I'm proud of you," Luca said, raising his glass. "You've come so far from the woman I met at the diner." "Different person," Emily agreed, "but also the same, just less afraid." "What are you afraid of now?" Emily thought about it honestly. "That I'll wake up one day and realize this was all temporary, that you'll move on to someone more polished, more naturally suited to your world." "Emily, you are my world. You became that without me even noticing." He reached across the table, took her hand. "I'm not going anywhere, and neither are you. We're building this together, remember?" "Together," Emily echoed. That night, standing outside her apartment, she still hadn't moved, despite being able to afford better now. Luca kissed her. Not strategic, not for show, just because he wanted to. And Emily kissed him back, and it felt like the final piece of transformation clicking into place. 3 months later, Emily got a text from Jenna. A photo of the diner with a "for sale" sign in the window, and the message, "End of an era, but you got out at the right time." Emily showed it to Luca. They were in his office, their office now, since she'd been promoted to full partner, reviewing plans for a new acquisition. "How do you feel about that?" he asked. "Like closing a chapter I should have closed years ago." She looked at the photo, at the place where she'd spent 4 years being invisible. "I'm glad it's over." "Any regrets?" "About the diner?" "No." "About Ryan?" "Sometimes. Not about losing him, but about how long I let him make me feel worthless." She set down her phone. "But I think I needed that. Needed to hit rock bottom before I could build myself back up properly." "You didn't build yourself back up. You built yourself into someone new. With your help." "With my help," Luca agreed. "But it was always you doing the work, Emily. I just gave you the push." A year after the wedding, Emily ran into Ryan at a coffee shop. Pure coincidence. She was meeting a client. He was there with colleagues. He looked older, more worn down. The expensive suit couldn't hide the exhaustion in his eyes. "Emily," he said, and there was so much packed into her name. Regret, nostalgia, something that might have been longing. "Ryan, how are you?" "Good, fine, busy." The lies came automatically. "You look amazing. Happy." "I am happy." Emily didn't elaborate. Didn't need to. "I saw you close that deal with Whitmore. Big news in commercial real estate circles." He smiled, but it was thin. "Guess you didn't need to work in hospitality management, after all." "Turns out I was capable of more than either of us thought." Emily kept her voice neutral, not unkind, but not warm either. "How's Vanessa?" "We're separated. Have been for a few months now." He laughed bitterly. "Turns out marrying for the right reasons on paper doesn't guarantee happiness." "Who knew?" Emily felt a flicker of sympathy, but not much more than that. "I'm sorry to hear that." "Are you?" "I wouldn't be if I were you." Ryan looked at her, really looked, like he was seeing her for the first time. "I was an idiot, Em. I had something real and I threw it away for something shiny. And now I have neither." "Ryan, I know you've moved on. I see the photos of you and Luca at events. You look happy, like you finally figured out who you are." He paused. "I guess I just wanted you to know that I know I messed up, that I'm sorry for how I treated you. You deserved better." Emily could have said a lot of things. Could have told him how much he'd hurt her, how long it took to rebuild her self-worth, how close she'd come to believing she was worthless. But looking at him now, defeated and regretful and clearly miserable, she realized he'd already punished himself more than she ever could. "Thank you for saying that," she said simply. "I hope you figure out what you're looking for, Ryan. I really do." She walked away feeling lighter. That chapter was finally completely closed. When she told Luca about it later, he just smiled. "How did it feel?" "Like talking to a stranger, like that whole relationship happened to someone else." Emily leaned against his desk. "Is that normal?" "You're different now, so yeah, it probably does feel like it happened to someone else. Because in a way it did." He pulled her into his lap. "The Emily who let Ryan define her worth doesn't exist anymore. You killed her off and became someone stronger." Poetic. "I have my moments." He kissed her softly. "Are we still pretending this is a fake engagement?" Emily looked at the ring she still wore. "I don't know. Are we?" "I'd like to stop pretending." Luca's expression was serious. "I'd like to make it real. Not right now, not with some big production, but eventually, when we're both ready." "That sounds like a proposal." "It's an intention. The proposal comes later when I can actually do it properly instead of in my office on a Tuesday afternoon." He smiled. "But I needed you to know that this is real for me. You're real for me. Everything we've built together." Emily's eyes stung. "It's real for me, too." 2 years after that wedding invitation arrived at her door, Emily stood in front of a mirror in a different dress. White this time, simple and elegant. Nothing like the emerald gown that had started everything. Jenna was beside her, adjusting the veil, talking a mile a minute about the ceremony. "Are you nervous?" Jenna asked. Surprisingly, no. Emily looked at her reflection and saw a woman she barely recognized from 2 years ago, confident, strong, someone who belonged exactly where she was. "I'm ready." The ceremony was small, just family and close friends, none of the elaborate production of Ryan and Vanessa's wedding. Luca's family had flown in from Italy, his mother crying happy tears, Marco serving as best man. Patricia was there, looking proud. Even Andre had come to make sure Emily's hair looked perfect. When Emily walked down the aisle and saw Luca waiting for her, she felt that same click of certainty she'd felt the night she decided to go to Ryan's wedding. This was right. This was real. This was the life she'd built from the ashes of the one that fell apart. "You look beautiful," Luca said when she reached him. "You look pretty good yourself." Emily smiled. "Ready to make this official?" "I've been ready since the moment you walked into my life and decided to be brave." The vows were simple, promises to support each other, to be honest even when it was hard, to keep growing together instead of apart. When they kissed, it felt like coming home. At the reception, Emily found herself thinking about how far she'd come, from the diner to here, from invisible to seen, from Ryan's discarded girlfriend to Luca's equal partner in business and life. "What are you thinking about?" Luca asked, pulling her onto the dance floor. "How none of this was in my plan 2 years ago. How I thought my life was over, and it turned out it was just beginning. Do you regret any of it?" Emily thought about the pain, the fear, the nights crying over Ryan's text message, thought about the terrifying leap of faith in agreeing to Luca's plan, thought about every moment of growth that hurt before it healed. "No," she said honestly, "I don't regret any of it. Even the hard parts led me here." "Good, because I don't regret it either." He spun her gently. "Emily DeLuca has a nice ring to it." "It really does." 6 months after their wedding, Emily started writing. Just for herself at first, working on a memoir about transformation and finding your voice when everyone told you to be quiet. Then for publication, because people needed to hear that it was never too late to become who you were meant to be. The book came out to modest success. Not a bestseller, but enough. Enough people reached out saying it helped them. Enough readers said they saw themselves in her story. Enough to matter. Luca framed the first review and hung it in their home office. "I'm proud of you," he said, "for having the courage to share your story." "Our story," Emily corrected. "I couldn't have written it without you." "No, this one's yours. I was just supporting cast." He kissed her temple. "The business stuff, that's ours. But your voice, your growth, your strength, that's all you, Emily. Don't give me credit for work you did yourself." Emily thought about that, about how true it was. Luca had given her opportunities and guidance, but she'd done the actual work of changing, of standing up straight, of learning to take up space without apologizing, of becoming someone she could be proud of. One night, almost 3 years after that first wedding invitation, Emily and Luca were walking through the city after dinner. They passed the building where the diner used to be. It was a boutique coffee shop now, all exposed brick and craft lattes. "Do you ever miss it?" Luca asked. "The simplicity of that life?" Emily looked at the storefront, at the place where she'd spent 4 years being invisible. "No, it was comfortable, but it was killing me slowly. I just didn't realize it until you showed me there was another option." "I didn't show you anything, just held up a mirror so you could see yourself clearly." Poetic again. "I'm improving." He pulled her close. "Emily, I need to tell you something I've been thinking about for a while." "Okay." "I want to start a foundation, using some of the profit from our developments to help people who are stuck like you were. People who have potential but no resources or belief in themselves. I want to give them the opportunities nobody gave me and the support nobody gave you until we found each other." He looked at her. "Would you want to run it? The foundation, I mean." Emily's breath caught. "Are you serious?" "Completely. You understand what it's like to be invisible, to feel trapped, to need someone to see your potential when you can't see it yourself. That makes you the perfect person to help others through the same transformation." He smiled. "Besides, you're the bravest person I know, and that's exactly what people need when they're trying to change their lives." Emily thought about it, about the girl who'd received that wedding invitation and thought her life was over, about everything she'd become since then, about the opportunity to help other people find that same strength. "Yes," she said. "I want to do it." They launched the foundation 6 months later, small at first, just helping a few people at a time with job training, professional development, the kinds of resources that opened doors. But it grew. People they helped went on to help others. The ripple effect spread. Emily threw herself into the work with the same intensity she'd brought to learning acquisitions. She met with applicants, heard their stories, saw her own past reflected in their struggles. And she helped them, the way Luca had helped her, not by doing the work for them, but by showing them they were capable of doing it themselves. 5 years after that wedding, Emily sat in their home office looking at photos from the foundation's latest event. 30 people they'd helped, all gathered to celebrate their achievements. New jobs, new careers, new lives built from the wreckage of old ones. Luca appeared in the doorway with 2 cups of coffee. "Admiring your work?" "Our work," Emily corrected. "None of this happens without both of us." Fair. He sat beside her, looking at the photos. You know what I love about this? You could have spent the rest of your life being angry at Ryan for how he treated you. Instead, you turned that pain into something that helps other people. That's the definition of transformation. Emily thought about Ryan sometimes, wondered how he was doing, if he'd found whatever he was looking for. She'd heard through the grapevine that he and Vanessa had finalized their divorce, that he'd moved to a different city for a fresh start. She hoped he was happy. Not in a bitter way. She genuinely hoped he'd found peace, but mostly she didn't think about him at all. He was part of her past, but not a part that defined her anymore. Do you ever regret how we started? Emily asked Luca. The fake engagement? The strategic manipulation of the situation? Luca considered it. No, because it worked. We both got what we needed. I got my business connections, you got your confidence, and somehow we also got each other. He set down his coffee. If I could go back and change it, make it more honest from the beginning, I wouldn't. Because the path we took is the one that led here. And here is pretty damn good. Here's perfect, Emily agreed. That night, lying in bed, Emily thought about the journey that had brought her to this moment. From invisible waitress to successful foundation director. From Ryan's forgotten ex to Luca's equal partner. From someone who apologized for existing to someone who took up space unapologetically. The transformation hadn't been smooth. There had been setbacks and doubts and moments when she'd wanted to quit. But she'd kept going, kept growing, kept becoming. And somewhere along the way, she'd stopped being Emily Dawson, the girl who